like to welcome a special guest, and that's the mayor of Laramie, Andy Somerville. Sorry. Thank you for joining us tonight.
I'm happy to be here, and the rooms were cooperative, which makes the experience easier.
Thank you. All right. First order of business, you have some minutes.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of January 24th and also the retreat minutes of January 26th.
It's been moved by Trustee Erickson and seconded by Trustee Ketchum. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. So we have the main dog with us tonight. Alpha Omega Zeta Chapter Phi Theta Kappa Member Induction Special Invitation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Trustees, Dr. Schaefer. Thank you for letting us share some of the things we are doing in our Phi Theta Kappa chapter. I'm Lane Dodd, and I'm the president of the Alpha Omega Zeta chapter. This is my third year here at LCCC, and I'm majoring this year in automotive technology. Hence the little dirty hands, I apologize. I'd like to thank the board and Dr. Schaefer for helping us find a place in the new Crossroads building for our meetings and our office space. It will be great to be with SGA and SBA groups and collaborate with our fellow students to create a real community of students. We also would like to invite you formally to our new member induction. Dr. Archie here is passing out the invitation now. The induction will be held in the Clay Pathfinder Leadership Center, Tuesday, March 6th. We will begin dinner at 6 p.m. Our speaker this year will be Mayor Marion Orr, so that should be great. We will end the evening with our white rose and candle ceremony. I hope you and a guest can all attend the induction. Next, I wanted to let you know that our chapter will be hosting the Colorado-Wyoming Regional Convention on campus this year. It's the Cowiers. So CO and WY, Cowie Region. And these are our new t-shirts this year. Representing on the back the hashtag IMPTK. So, yeah, so those are nice. And those are available for $10, just so you know. Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe I wasn't supposed to say that. So, yeah. All right. We hope to have about 78 participants from many of the 32 chapters here in our region. We will have training workshops and then elect our new regional officers. Dr. Archie will hand out the regional awards at the end of this convention. We also just met with Dr. Schaefer to develop our college project. This is a requirement from the International Society in which we develop a project to help our college. This year, members of our chapter will be focusing on the Vitals program and creating awareness and specific oriented resources here on campus. And finally, we will be electing 6 new chapter officers in March, and they will attend training in Kansas City, Missouri in April at the International Convention. This year, Phi Theta Kappa is celebrating its centennial, so it should be a wonderful event. I think that's it, and I'd like to thank you for our time, and I would be happy to answer any of the questions you may have at this time.
Questions for Ed?
I have a quick, can you tell me again when that the joint conferences that you guys are talking about?
The regional convention?
Yeah, the CAL.
Yep, it will be March 9th and 10th.
Oh, just coming up.
Just, yep, right around the corner.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the President of Staff Senate.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, trustees, thank you. Just a couple of brief comments. We've had our crock pot cook-off, and so we had that actually last week. We had a great attendance this year, which we're really excited about. Great opportunity to bring people together on across campus, not just our staff, Senate members and staff members, but also faculty and others across campus. And so we're able to raise just over $200 for our scholarship fund. And so we'll look forward to being able to have some student benefit from that in the future. And then we also, I think, probably had between 40 and 50 people show up and had some great food and time to hang out. And a lot of people got really competitive this year, and we hope to have even more next year. So just keep that in mind, and we'll get information out to you about that. And then secondly, we're moving forward with our staff retreat that we did decide to offer again in June. It will be on June 28th, a Thursday at the Pathfinder building. And I'm excited. You've heard me mention before this year, we've got more participation in Staff Senate this year, and actually have a committee. That's not me and the officers that's actually planning our staff retreat this year, and they're really excited. I met with them again today, and there's some really fun ideas that are floating around, and you'll be hearing more about that. So please put that on your calendar and look forward to either attending or having your staff attend. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Right. Next up, we have a faculty senate report from Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm here in place of Nate, who usually comes and reports to you guys. So he's taking well-deserved night off, and I'm Vice President of Faculty Senate. So I'm here with you tonight. So bear with me if I don't do as well as Nate does. I'm not as good at this. Senate held, Faculty Senate recently held a faculty forum. We had a turnout of just under 30 faculty that attended. And so it was to talk about the compensation and classification model that was just proposed not too long ago. And faculty have had some concerns, so it just gave us a chance to come together and kind of talk about those concerns. We consolidated those concerns into some questions. Many of those questions were answered when I attended College Council this past week, and so we'll be sharing those answers with faculty as we continue on. Any of the questions that weren't answered, we'll be working with human resources and hoping to get some answers, although we understand they're very swamped right now with all the changes that are going on. So we also understand that having some patience and giving them some time to kind of figure out what they're doing as well needs to occur, and we'll make sure that faculty is aware of those things. But we were able to get some timelines during College Council. So again, that information will be dispersed to all faculty. Senate's hoping to partner with Staff Senate for a fall book club. So we're going to start organizing it this spring, and a fall book club that will be around the club redesigning America's community colleges. The goal will be to promote among faculty and staff the research that Pathway Initiatives uses. And Senate will use the rest of, as I mentioned, the rest of this semester to kind of get things in line. We've had a generous offer. Clark has told us that he'll buy books for faculty, which is amazing. We're hoping to work something similar so staff might be able to get that to him and throw that out here in public so that maybe we can help with that too. So not that I'm putting you on the spot at all. Okay. And then Senate will be holding office elections in April. We hope to have the new officers available for the May board meeting. That's pretty much it right now. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for your patience.
All right. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. I'll try to keep my report brief because I know we've got a full agenda and lots of other things that we want to dig into. Really, the most pressing thing I want to share with you is just a quick legislative update. I'd like to say it's the most current, but things are changing as we speak. The House is still in session, and as you can imagine, there's considerable things happening still. A couple of just big things, you know, probably the most significant set of bills that we're watching right now are the two capital construction bills. The one House side, House Bill 194, and then on the Senate side, House Bill 121. Those are important to us for a variety of reasons. The first being, of course, that our matching funds for the fine arts remodel, renovation, and expansion is in both bills. I believe it's stuck and it's in as part of a community college package in Senate File 121, which passed in third reading today. And then they're, I believe, debating third reading on House Bill 194 right now. And thus far, the funding for the Fine Arts Building has stuck in there as well. There's been 2 attempts by a representative from the western part of the state to strip out just the fine arts portion of the bill. My understanding is both of those have been unsuccessful. And so, at least it's the latest status update, the fine arts funding is still intact. The other piece we're watching that's generated some significant conversation and I think debate is in relation to, for lack of a better word, the low interest loan option for community college residence halls. This is also part of the capital construction bills, although in different formats now. This originated from legislation that was proposed during the Joint Appropriation Committee's markup. The chair of House Appropriations, Representative Nicholas from Marion County, actually moved and was successful in getting language in there to allow a $30 million loan from the Permanent Mental Trust Fund to essentially go towards building a residence hall here at LCCC for a variety of reasons. That proposal and that movement out of appropriations has generated considerable conversation, both good and I would say bad. Maybe it's all good, but for our outcome. I think many representatives and senators saw the value and perhaps the unique approach of using the option of a public purpose investment to fund residence halls. But there was also a lot of concern that it was so narrowly tailored and limited just to Laramie County Community College. So as that's moved out, House or Senate approach stripped that provision. We had a very laudable attempt by Senator Nethercott and others to advance an amendment to basically restore that, but expand it to allow all community colleges to participate. That was not successful on second reading in the Senate. And then Senator Nethercott helped us with another option that was successful that would open up essentially revenue bonding capacity using the state as the state's credit ratings that may provide some options for us. On the House side, an amendment was successful today that would actually open up that bill or that program to all community colleges and essentially double the amount from 30 million to 60 million. That was successful through second reading. I do not believe it's been stripped in third reading, but I don't know. I guess we'll find out probably by the end of this evening. So what that means for us, I think most importantly, is it actually creates an opportunity, if it's successful, for us to access a low interest loan that we believe will make our new residence hall pencil. There's a lot of details that have to be worked out with how the application would come together to the State Loan Investment Board and the requirements. I think some of our requirements would be to still use a deferred debt structure, but this really opens up an opportunity that did not exist for us prior to the legislative session. We will see, since the Senate bill and the House bill will be very different when they flip. One of those bills has to essentially make it all the way through the process for it to even go to conference committee. So I would say that was probably the easy part as they switch houses, is where it's going to get somewhat challenging. The budget bill and state aid to the community colleges is still holding. As I've said all along, the governor's willingness to step in and say the community colleges have taken their reductions, and so he did not invoke another reduction based on the recalibration. Discussed at dinner, with House Bill 80. Has been the difference of us looking at a $4.75 million cut to really being held whole as we go into the next session. And that seems to be sticking, and there is really broad support for the community colleges across the legislature. There's a few other pieces moving. There is some discussion and movement on backfilling the higher ed endowment fund. That's the endowment that the community colleges CUW receive funding for. We've used it predominantly to fund health science faculty. It has, because the investment strategy I don't want to say it's been underwater, but it's lost its revenue to the point we've had to move faculty off. The Joint Appropriations Committee actually earmarked some money to try to make that whole. I believe that amount was cut in half. I'm not sure where it sits today, but for us, that could be the difference of having to, again, move more faculty off of those funds and find room in the general fund, or actually being able to sustain the faculty that we have on there. So we are watching that one. And with that, Mr. Chairman, those are really the big hot topics at this point. I know there's other bills floating around. I'd be happy to try to answer questions if you have some on any other legislation, but these are the priorities that we're really trying to shepherd through the process.
Mr. Chair, Dr. Schaefer, could you clarify for me the House bill that the amendment that would provide 60 million for low interest loan, and then the Senate? I was a little confused as to whether the Senate one is still at 30 million, or if it's still there, or it's been modified.
Good question, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson. So the House bill now has an amendment that passed on second reading. We'll see if anything happened in third. That essentially takes that concept, which would allow a portion of the permanent trust fund to go to those loans. The House side basically is now opened up to having $60 million available just for community college residence hall projects to be eligible, and then it defines an application process, interest rates, and all that. That same amendment was not successful on the Senate side, and so it does not exist. And the original language that was narrowly tailored to LCCC was actually stripped by Senate appropriation. So it was a standing committee amendment before it even got to committee of the whole. And so there is no language in the Senate's bill that pertains to the low interest loan. As I said, what Senator Nethercott and Senator Meyer and a few others helped do was actually open up a program UW had access to that would allow us to do lease revenue bonds using the state's credit rating essentially. And so that does create an opportunity. I don't quite understand it fully yet. But there was at least some movement on the Senate side to help get us down the road with this concept.
And just to follow up, the bond rating with the state is more in the right direction for us, or don't we have a good bond rating ourselves at LCCC?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson, that's been probably one of the biggest challenges, because through this process, we've heard about programs that the state lands in the treasurer's office have available for loans for capital infrastructure, and then similar with the concept of using their rating. We actually can, through the building authority, get very competitive interest rates. We have good bond rating there. The treasurer's office program, essentially, their interest rates are actually higher than what we could probably get through local banks if we were to do this. So I don't know, but I would guess whatever differences with the state's crediting isn't going to be significant as close to the gap. But I don't know that for sure. I'm not sure what their rating would be or what their average coupon for revenue.
We'll see at the end of the session.
We're learning quickly.
Any other questions, comments? Right. So the next, we're working into approval items at this point, or no, we have to look at it. So I'll take status.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to look to you. We have special guests here across the board. I know that the WyoTech conversation is important. And I need your feedback. We have the mayor from Laramie here to I'm sure we're going to weigh in a little bit. But we also have some exciting folks here to represent the library project and get your approval on moving forward with the library project. So I guess I would defer to you. Do you want to move the library up and then get to WyoTech, or do we want to take WyoTech? And I don't know, Rick, if our friends from BWG have time constraints or.
It will be returned back to Denver.
Yeah. We're okay with moving this over?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, those would be that.
We'll move to item B, the Learn Library and Learn Commons Innovation.
Mr. Chairman, I'm actually going to turn this over to Vice President Johnson. We've been talking about this compressed timeline because of the way the state gave us approval on this project. So they're building the plane while you're flying, and it feels like some of these documents are truly hot off the press. But time is going to be of the essence, and so they've done a good job of trying to get information in front of you so that you can hopefully approve and move forward with the design concept so we can start getting closer to construction. I will point out also, as Vice President Johnson gets into this, there is a second approval item right below this that I can explain either right afterwards, or we can come back to it, to have us move forward with the funding as presented at your retreat, at your last meeting. There is a couple of budget amendments. We need one amendment to two items that we need you to make. So just know that will be coming as a part of this as well. So.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's wonderful to have Bennett Wagner Brody here with us tonight to talk a little bit about the library. I'm not going to get into the details. I'll let them do it, but I might note that we have Mara Hadaway with us tonight, Dean of Libraries, and then quite a number of her staff. And so if something were to come up where maybe you have a question with regard to how the staff sees things, they've been very involved with this process. We've held a number of charrettes with staff and others. I'm sure they'd be happy to help answer any questions. So, Jordan touched on what's ahead of you, approving the project hopefully tonight, and then an amendment for funding. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Linda and Adam. They have a presentation for you, and then some additional information to share.
Thank you, Rick. Well, it's our pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you. We've been on a whirlwind visioning and programming adventure with the library staff and everybody working with Rick, Bill Zink, and our engineers in order to put this project together. So, and we actually started about over 2 years ago, I think maybe even 3. So a lot of the visioning really began way back, and we have some pretty good roots. But time has passed, and we have new things to accomplish as we go, and we'll go through that. So first, we did go through all of our goals and visioning, and the key, some of the key features that we want to accomplish with the new library and learning commons is to provide 21st century learning environments for students, to create spaces that are more student-centered rather than book-centered, create spaces for all kinds of learning, whether it be in small group rooms or active participation out in the open or individual study, quiet study, opportunities for teachers to interact with students heavily in the learning commons. So all of these activities are really important to really creating a fantastic, fabulous new library. So, and along with that, since the library is not had a lot of updates, it's had some small updates over the years, an addition in the 90s, so there's code updates, there's accessibility, there's plumbing deficiencies, some heating and ventilating issues that we'll be working through and really making this a complete makeover and a fabulous space. Accessibility from the north side and that kind of thing, all of these code issues we want to accomplish. So we started out looking at, what kind of influences also that would shape the library from the outside and from the inside. So on the outside, we took a look at the environment, the landscape. We want this to fit into your campus and to your environment. We want it to fit in with the buildings that you have on campus that are an asset and have a strong look and that sort of thing. We want to create some branding for this. A great big, certainly a major task is to really create a new facade to the north and hopefully south side of the library so that you really have this very key place on the campus have a very high important presence, sort of the academic student center in a way. It's really an important space on campus. And we really liked the kind of undulation in the landscape. We maybe taking some of that through. On the inside of the building, it's quite a deep structure, the existing building with not a lot of daylight. So we want to really, be bringing in a great deal of daylight. We have an opportunity to bringing some ceiling heights up. You have a lot of 9-foot ceilings, so on the additions, we really want to both create more presence on the outside of the building and also some really great spaces on the inside. We want to see what we can do with branding. There's a lot of things going on in this campus and in this community that can be really showed off in the library. And then there's some really fun materials that we can bring into the library, colored glass, in spaces where we're creating a little bit of a sense of privacy, but you still want to be able to see somewhat in and out. We can do some imagery in order to do that sort of thing. So, and then furnishings are going to be really important, and we'll have a great deal of variety. We'll have some new study rooms that aren't little dark boxes, which they are right now, but more light and open, and just a much greater sense of transparency throughout. Again, the higher ceilings, more daylight, furniture that creates nooks and places to study, and color. And these are some of the kinds of furniture that we've been looking at that will play a key role. Movable furniture in the exhibit area where you can have presentations and that sort of thing. Very flexible, fun furniture. Places where you can study as an individual, study spaces, more spaces for computers, and some really excellent collaborative spaces with screens and that sort of thing. Sure.
So the project we're proposing is a balance of renovation and addition, as you can see in the level 2 report, proposing about 21,000 square feet of renovation of the existing library and expanding out into the hallway and towards the mall to the south. And then the addition is 7,000 square feet, and it's currently comprised of a new skin along the north face and along to the west to really give a new vision, a new look to the library to the north. There's 2 smaller additions proposed. One is to add a new face to the vestibule that's currently between the library and the fine arts, as well as a smaller addition just underneath the elevator, underneath the arcade, to provide, again, a new face to the mall. We're looking at a site plan here, and Linda's pulling out our site model in which we studied the massing of this new addition. As you know, the site slopes quite dramatically to the north from the parking lot, and it's currently a single sidewalk that's very steep and somewhat treacherous during certain times. So part of this project is a new entry procession into the building from the north. So what this is showing is a gradual set of stairs that takes us to a series of landings with a gentle ramp that accompanies it to the side that allows all participants and all community members to make it into the building. It's somewhat modest, and we're being mindful of potential future building additions for the fine arts addition. So that interface between is going to be something that we need to keep talking about and understanding as we move forward.
So sort of creating phase 1 of the phase 2 plaza that marries up with fine arts in the future, but looks good how it is standalone.
What's shown here is some small plazas, small little seating areas, maybe some planting areas here that accompany this walk as you go up and start to provide a foreground to library users as they're sitting here looking out the windows and give them a nice sort of manicured and articulated landscape.
A little bit of activity as people are walking down. So then we basically, our approach has been to do a really simple structure because we want to really preserve the funds for the library itself and everything student oriented. So as you can see, this is the existing library in this location. This is the 90s edition. that went in with the skylight. Well, that's just drama.
Doesn't like it.
So we studied, the first one we did, really just, we studied some that were rectangular, but they looked really static. And then we did also see what you were doing with fine arts. It had kind of this nice reach out presence with the angle to it. And we find this, creating sort of a little bit of a funnel shape here could be really positive and really draw people in. We thought that bringing the height up a little bit here is nice. There will be a kind of a bit of plinth that this is sitting on, similar to the dining addition. And it's got that band of stone at the bottom. So this will be sitting up just a little bit, which is actually nice, gives it presence. But as Adam says, at least this very steep walk right now will be able to solve that. You can walk in without slip and fall. Then we looked at a couple of other forms, just one where we brought a piece of it up here, and then we had just a smaller step in that location. And then we did another one where we reversed that and brought this piece up. We were thinking that this was looking somewhat monolithic though, and we thought we would break it up in yet one more piece. And so we're proposing this part of it be higher. We will still have great ceiling heights of 12 to 13 feet, a little bit higher in this location, and then back to that height here. The ceiling heights in the existing will remain close to 9 because of the double ceiling and that sort of thing that are running in it. And they're existing at 10, which is not bad in that addition.
Could I ask you to turn it so that we can all see that side from the machine?
And then see that? And so pretty simple, but we think it can have some drama and be a nice beacon and really be a unique piece on the campus. And we'll get into the materials a little bit.
And I mean, right now we're proposing that it is flush with the existing floor of the library. And we think that that makes perfect sense. Just if you're wondering about that step to the north, the use of the library inside and not inhibiting any movement within the library kind of was a big priority. So that's how the resultant floors difference worked out. With this addition of roughly a third of the size of the existing library, we're looking at doubling the seats for students. So it's all about student space and the various ways that they're learning, and adding, I believe, at least 50% more computers for all for students. So it's getting a lot of value there. If we look at the floor plan, starting to accommodate and really lay out the library with the stacks are located in the center of the library. I guess that's always want to talk about books first, but really the idea is as you enter the library, the entrance is going to be much more open. We're proposing a series of operable gates or grills that will allow a very large opening from the hallway now and really start to engage the library itself and the space outside, and creating a 24-hour computer and study area, an exhibit and heritage space that functions, can be multifunctional for events, study, exhibit of local artifacts and history. But when open, it's essentially the library is spilling out into that public space.
And the idea is to have the path or the, what was a corridor, but now is this great path to really start to clue you into this is the library and you want to be there, and it's it's just going to be fresh and fun and nice. You'll be able to see things that are going on.
Yeah, coming
Coming from the west, we're proposing opening the corner, and this is the space for our innovation space. And opening that with glass and have some really high visibility from this point here all the way through the library. So you've come into this really advanced new way of learning and new technologies here, and really the first step in drawing you into the library and all that.
So then the circulation desk is taking on the role of really just being the heart of the space, and will actually be the point from which all other activities can be directed. Mara and colleagues have worked hard to reduce the number of stacks in order to get more student seating. Office space is somewhat dispersed, but not completely. Quite a few new study rooms are proposed, some small ones, like for 2 people, so that people aren't occupying a whole big room. If you're just a single person and you want it very quiet or need it very quiet. The area in most of the addition is more of the quiet area. It's the furthest part away, more activity and vibe in front of the library. A new learning commons is proposed that is combining the writing center and success center, so that whole activity will be available in one space, but broken down into nooks and different types of activities. We have a large instruction room with computers and audiovisual capability, and a large conference room. And then a lot of collaborative furniture will be placed throughout the entire library, similar to some of the furniture pieces that we showed on the earlier slide. And this is the sort of an axonometric that just gives you a little better idea of what's going on in the library. We call it, "Where's Waldo?"
But here's the front entrance. Circ desk is very obvious right there, and centrally located with good visibility of the library. The windows that currently exist on the north, we're utilizing that to make a large opening in the existing wall to provide access to the new part of the addition. That was also the first real good peekaboo at the north and all the glass that we're proposing on the north side. So really from this point in, we want to draw you through the library and back to all these study spaces.
And in this, you can see a little bit more of the innovation space of what's happening in there, and that we hope to get more transparency to all of the offices as well. So this is an enlargement of the innovation space with counters, a bench for collaboration, computer stations, collaborative furniture for working on projects, very project-oriented kind of a space. You can do all different kinds of things in it. You can do 3D printing, you can do IR, AR,
VR,
the different realities in there. So there's a lot of flexible possibilities that are proposed for that space. And then a blow up of the learning commons. And then the exhibit and heritage space, we're planning for casework to very nicely in an artful way be able to display all of the different artifacts that we have, historical pieces and that sort of thing. And then you can have an event here, you could have a traveling art show here, you could have community events, you could have any kind of a regular presentation for classes and that sort of thing. And then a family area with a little bit of project fun equipment, as well as bins with books, a few computers, and a place for parent and child or staffing to work.
Beginning to look at a ceiling plan here and really understanding what's what's happening with the addition and the ceiling heights, a variety of ceiling from acoustic ceilings to acoustic tile to drywall ceilings to wood tile ceilings that provide a bit of warmth, but also acoustic absorption to keep these spaces quiet. The yellow spots are showing, again, the high part that we looked at in the model, where we're looking to attain 14-foot clear ceiling height. So the highest point for ceilings we're proposing is right in this front point, with these flanking zones with ceilings about 12 feet. The existing library has 9-foot ceilings. We're looking to maintain at least 9 foot, and there could be zones where we could pop up higher. And there could be spots where we want to pop down lower to create more intimate spaces. As the ceiling comes down, similarly, this creates a more intimate environment than what's sometimes a very large open space as we have in mind.
And then the shape of the innovation space with not having standard rectangular walls, we're hoping, and a ceiling that's just a little bit interesting, in order to really foster creativity so that you're out of your box, literally. So that's the idea about the shaping of that space, which could be great.
Right now it's a bit chaotic. We're really studying 2 simple systems, 2 simple grids. The existing fabric, this rectangular format of the existing building with the shifted square that's of the new addition, and really interesting things can happen in the ceiling when that comes together, but just utilizing pretty basic construction.
And it can be reflected in floor finishes and really work together.
Exterior concept. So the idea of this new addition to the north is really this beacon, this meant to draw people in, the entire community. Again, here we're looking at the stairs and the steps and the ramp that guide us up to our new north vestibule here. This corner is primarily glass, with the rest of the addition taking on more of a solid wall with smaller window openings to balance the amount of daylight, get as much daylight as we can, but balance energy concerns and mechanical concerns of how much glass. So that's currently the state of our study right now, is understanding envelope and mechanical systems. We get into it there, but we're looking at texture. Early influences were really inspired by texture, pattern, and color. So how can we bring some of those ideas into the exterior design to create interest? Very simply, overlay things in a creative way, we think. The mullion patterns here, vertical, not only provide kind of interest and give the look of the rolling hills that we were inspired by, but also are very functional in that they provide sun shading, particularly on the west side, where as the sun sets, it gets low. Vertical shading is much more usable than horizontal shading. Try not to get as much multifunction out of everything we do, and even here in the design. We are looking at about 6 or 7 foot wall at this corner. Again, I mean, it gives us a height, it gives us a presence, but we want to be able to treat this wall well. This could be where the, signage, identification, Ludden Library could be worked into that wall. It's
Or we
a good opportunity.
may bring in just a little bit more wrap around the corner in order to bring the grade up a bit.
Yeah.
So with that,
Well, that's the design. We are working with our construction manager, and we've worked on the cost estimate. This is presented in the level 2 report. Our target is 4.96, and at this stage, they're working off these colorful drawings. We're going to be to go into the next stage where we're actually doing construction documents and we can bid it and get real numbers. But we work in a system called target value design, where we work towards a budget. The cardinal rule is your budget must never be exceeded, and we're very passionate about that. And we have a very collaborative sessions that we've just started collaborating with them, and it's been going great. We feel very comfortable with the budget, but there will always be some tough discussions, but we're feeling confident that the budget allocated so far is
so, and we basically have a basic concept that we know can be accomplished, that really addresses the needs of the library and accomplishes the library. And then we have a list of priorities and options and that sort of thing that as we refine the numbers and have a good confidence that we can afford them, we will bring them back into the budget. But that's the task at hand for the next month or so, is to really, we're continuing on with better, more refined drawings, and they can do better numbers from that. But at this point, we think we can do a successful library. So any questions?
Questions? Oh, the question, go.
I just wanted, I know the library folks are here tonight, and I know that you collaborated with these two fine people. Are you happy with this design? I mean,
Yes.
I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
You have gotten what you're gonna need to have a great.
Had a really big role in the planning, and yeah, any ideas or suggestions you have, they've been very receptive. Yeah, we're very excited. I'm very excited.
I'm very happy about that, because that's what it's all.
I know we're getting a good value for the budget that we have. They're really maximizing our budget with the business.
I guess before, because I would like to hear from more of them. Are there any other questions?
I don't know, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question per se, but I do have a comment as your treasurer. And I've been on this board now since my 6th year, and I've had the good fortune of being involved with the development of a couple other buildings like Flex Tech and the Pathfinder building. And we stayed on budget with the Flex Tech back when we went under budget. But we weren't able to do that with Pathfinder. We had to cut back substantially some things. And when you say you have a firm view that the dollar sign that you have here is not going to be exceeded, I would expect that to be the case. Because this board doesn't, I don't think we really want to have to cut back. It looks pretty good. And the more I look at it, the more I say, how can you do this for $5 million? And seriously, it looks like it's a big jump. So I think we're expecting you to stay within that $5 million.
Well, we're going to do everything within our powers, because there isn't more than that to do. We won't be able to proceed without being at budget, at bidding. So that's what we need to do. There's always some give and takes. There's always some unknowns that come in. We're going to have to wrestle with those. But, we're going to work together with the library staff, and we're going to pick the best things to go ahead. And we know we basically can get a really good library.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson, just a comment. I'm thinking, relative to what you said, as we get closer to May, when we put this out to bid and we get construction results from that, we're not going to exceed our budget, but we might have to make compromises, depending on how all that rolls out. So say they came in much higher than we anticipated, then we're going to have to make some compromises to stay over that threshold. So I don't want to leave the expectation that we may not be carrying some compromises.
I'm sorry, that raises the question with me. Compromising. You mean cutbacks?
Yeah, perhaps they're just making stuff up now, but perhaps we have to cut back some finishes, the quantity of finishes, or the level of finishes. Ceiling adjustments, where we're going to put some splash in some areas, maybe it has to be less of that splash, whatever the case may be.
I'm gonna, for as long as I can, hold an trustee card. And I'd like to know who the library staff, if you get introductions, who all here is on the.
Maybe a more introduce that and give some comments.
Or
Hi, my name is Mara Hadaway. I am the Associate Dean of London Library and Learning Commons. And let's see, the staff that are here today are Jennifer Dempsey. She is the Director of the Learning Commons, which includes all of our training services and the exam lab. We have Linda Hergit, who is our Public Services. Titles just changed, so I can't remember all of them, but she's out there in the front. She manages our circulation services, interlibrary loan, and all of our events coordination. We have Maggie Sanger, who is our electronic resources librarian. So she manages access to all of our electronic resources and databases. And we have Dana McCammon, who is our administrative assistant extraordinaire. That should be added to her title. And she does pretty much everything. And then we have Carolyn Questus, who is our cataloging technician. And so she makes sure that everything is accessible and available to everyone in the catalog. Well, I'd just like to say thank you for your time today. I jumped into this project kind of in the middle of it, in a sort of way, because I worked here a long time ago as the administrative assistant in the library under Karen Lange. And back then, we were even talking about the renovation. So it was really exciting to come on board and see this coming to life, and working with Linda and Adam and Martha and Bill and Rick have been great assets. It really worked to help us get our thoughts out there. And, you know, anecdotally, we know what our students need. Like Constance says, she never uses the library because it's too crowded. But, you know, we did a survey of our student needs in the spring, and we really took a lot of those to heart, especially with the innovation space, with the 24-hour space, with the family space, the quiet space, you know, getting the learning commons into one area. Those were all things that our students really wanted. They may not have expressed them exactly and give me a space for it, but they help, you know, the architects really helped us translate that to our students. So.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have one, and that, and I'll show one of my not a pet peeve, but perhaps a perception about the campus that we're trying to transform from a physical environment. So in the exterior rendering, and I know we've got that extreme grade, and I know we've got the wonderful loading dock we've got to contend with and all of that. Tell me about the elevation concrete wall, and tell me that we can treat that or do something to that it doesn't add more very rectangular concrete buildings on our campus, because that's one of the things we're trying to do with a lot of these renovations is create interest, appeal, elevation, dynamics, and break up the somewhat monotonous tan, sandstone, rectangular, low ceiling type of perception. So when I see more vertical concrete, I always kind of get my hackles up a little bit, but I'm assuming not just with plantings, but there's things we can do to treat that wall to give it some aesthetic appeal, and perhaps move us away from that concrete feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So much we can do. We can color it, we can texture it, we can score it, we can apply materials to it, we can certainly plant in front of it, we can grade up to it gradually, similarly to how we're doing along the west side. We can do all those things. Just even scoring simply when they put up their concrete forms, they put rustication strips, these little triangular pieces, and they provide a really interesting pattern. We can texture it with how we line the forms to provide a really interesting pattern. Some of those things all these things have varying costs, so we want to balance that. So it's if that's a pet peeve of yours, that certainly moves to the top of the priority list.
No, students are the first priority. So my pet peeves are lower on the road.
I'm sorry.
If it's on your list, it'll be on other lists.
Yeah. You're not the first to suggest that, even though it's a wonderful comment. So noted. I think we have to work with the budget to make sure that happens.
I'm in the feng shui and how things flow. I'm concerned about maybe I can't see the picture, but maybe give a top view when you're picture show where the egress points are from the building, and also bathroom locations relative where students might be.
Sure. start with the last bathrooms. We are, for the sake of frugality, trying to maintain the existing bathrooms that are outside of the library proper itself along the hallway. But through the additions and updated codes, we need to study the plumbing counts. We know we're 2 toilets short, so we're proposing 2 additional toilets there in the same vicinity, so that we can take advantage of the existing plumbing that's already there. So and try and save as much money as we can.
But they are on the way in and out of the library for the majority of the students, so they should be quite readily accessible and not something that's out of line.
Egress points, the most obvious ones in an egress situation are the way that you came in. It says more than 50% of people will go out the way that they came in. So that's our large opening here to the south into the hallway. We do have an additional door that's really only there for loading in and small deliveries. It's going to be not really played up from the outside, but that could also be used as an exit. Deep into the library here, we're proposing another exit in this zone, currently shown exiting out of through the family space.
There will be probably, it's emergency only exit. It's not one that people are going in and out of.
Isn't there also another door down on the lower left as you come up the stairs? No, on the lower left, right? Keep on going down. No, notice you have a little foyer there to the left.
Yes.
Okay, and aren't there doors there?
Yes.
And then aren't those doors then go into that hallway?
Yes.
These come into that, yeah. So the full path would be out this door into the hallway and probably out into the mall. If there's an issue there, then you can come down the hallway and exit through this way.
Or you can head on down to the commons.
Or you could come in from the walkway as well. Yeah.
So, this addition here is really a vestibule addition and one to, try to link the color, the facade, the look, the transparency, with the outside, so everything is working together to draw you in all sorts of functional. And then the exhibit area also has access out onto the mall.
But no, for now, I guess it's just a little concerned about wind patterns and stuff as well. Is there that path right there? Is that your wind tunnel?
Well, we have the ramp, and the ramp we're proposing walls around it. So to stop prevailing winds from the west. Also, planting along here could knock down the wind, but that's what these are showing, are sort of raised planter beds that have low walls, but every little bit helps. And certainly, if there's a fine arts edition here, it's up in the air, really, in terms of how wind is funneled in through that space.
One nice thing would be to, add a translucent glass, just partial height, so that if people are sitting here, that they have a little bit more protection. That'll be budget, something budget-wise that we need to look at to see if we can afford it, but we would love to do that because it would be, make it so much nicer to be able to sit outside when it's a little bit.
Any other questions? Thank you, guys. Is there, before we get to a motion, is there any other public comment? Anybody else would like to make a comment?
If I may.
Yes.
Back to that concrete wall, if we're afraid of it looking like a square piece of concrete and not being used by the students here, you could give a couple art students some spray cans.
Yeah.
Make a little contest out of it. It would look great.
Well, that was really starting to like you, Derek.
Well, we may be able to solve it both ways. By doing something artistic that solves your wish to make it pleasant.
I do believe I've seen something in the news about a college with a certain wall that they allow students to paint over every semester. So it was just some always evolving piece of art. But I'll leave that to administration to make the calls.
We can find a place.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
So we have a staff recommendation. Yes,
Make a motion.
please.
I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Trustees approve spending $500,000 of the 1 mil reserve fund balance and $500,000 from the major maintenance for the additional cost to the London Library organization. Okay, I also make that.
They go to hand.
Hand in hand motions on data.
Second.
Moved by trustee Merrill and seconded by trustee Erickson. Is there any other discussion?
What exactly is the motion?
Motion is approval of the level 2 schematic design as well as the 1 mil budget.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, moving them, I find it moving those together just because we do have still some new trustees and some new. So when we have significant changes to the budget over the course of the year, budget that you approve, it's quite common for you to get budget amendments. Generally, those come at the tail end of the year and deal more with how auxiliary revenues and expenses change. Knowing that we had funds sort of planned, as we went through at your last meeting, stuff in the 1 mil, and even in the plan fund on the major maintenance side, we chose to make this a separate budget amendment now, so essentially ensure that we're pulling those funds in for expenditure as part of the projects. And so that's what we're doing. We're amending the budget you approved by essentially pulling money out of fund balances to come in specifically for those projects. And they were being held in those fund balances specifically for this project. But this is the procedural step that will essentially amend your fiscal year 18 budget. I just want to make sure people understand.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, so if you fellow trustees don't mind, we'll move to the LTC fight song versus Gray. President Schaefer.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, yeah, I know you had a wonderful presentation at dinner. I think our students did a fantastic job with the fight song. You heard it. You have before you two things. One is the resolution, essentially that if you pass and formally adopt Birds of Prey as the LCCC fight song, we'll have you sign that. That will become the official fight song. But also, for the record, is the actual score associated with the fight song, the lyrics and the music. And so both of those are areas. And my recommendation wholeheartedly is that you pass the resolution to adopt the fight song.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Board of Trustees approves the resolution for the establishment of Birds of Prey as the official LCCC fight song.
I'll second that motion.
Moved by trustee Lewis and seconded by trustee Merrill. Is there any other discussion?
Go Eagles. Did I not have enough room between?
Oh, that's good. It's your own control. We'll have them come around.
Yeah, we need some training.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's what I was here for. Good.
You're a movie star now.
Oh, one step at a time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, very impressive.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay, we are now going back up to our work items. We have a status update and discussion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. stretch, get coffee as we get into this. So, I shared with you just some general thoughts to help you start thinking about where we're at right now with the WyoTech conversation. We'll recap those here briefly. This is as a work item underneath on your agenda. Although I do believe and would actually hope that you can provide me some direction, perhaps through formal action tonight, and we'll see if we actually get there. So quick recap. We've got the history of WyoTech. Everybody kind of knows how we got to this point. Things that have changed since your last meeting, where we really got into this not too long ago, that are going to be important to denote. So the first piece, and I think is probably one of the biggest drivers at this point, is the legislation as it's been crafted, and I believe mirrors both the House and the Senate. The current amendment, the current legislation reads that there will be $5 million appropriated for the biennium to support the ongoing operation of, I believe the language is automotive technology trade school. That legislation, and I'm assuming it will stick, and I think we're wondering that auspice, essentially allows for two things, for two types of proposals to come forward. A private sector proposal that could actually request access to the $5 million in the terms of a low interest loan, or a request from a community college, a proposal from a community college that would access that $5 million in the form of a grant. So if it goes to the private side, it's a loan. If it were to come to a community college, it would be a grant. Proposals have to be developed and provided to the Wyoming Business Council, who has till April 1st to make a recommendation to the governor on which proposal would meet Wyoming's interests most significantly or best. To do that, then the governor can determine which proposal he would want to essentially fund and which process that he would take. There's some interesting pieces within the legislation, and I won't really discuss the private side unless you have questions with that sort of say these are the things we want to look at. But a private proposal would essentially have to put together a comprehensive business plan, documentation, illustrate financial backing, all that wonderful stuff you would expect in a business plan. On the community college side, there's some interesting things. We have to provide some information such as number of jobs, estimation for ongoing state support, all that stuff. It's really in the prospectus that we released. But it also requires that we have binding commitment from one or more political subdivisions from the county that the trade school exists in. So in the city of Laramie. Other language in there actually dictates, I would say, that the county would have to request annexation for year 2 of the funding. So $5 million, year 1 is $2.5 million, year 2 is $2.5 million. Year 1 to be released, there needs to be some type of binding commitment that says we're willing to provide ongoing support, or at least get that conversation going by one or more political subdivisions. To date, both the county commission and the city council have passed resolutions that I believe satisfy that requirement within the statute. The statute would then require us, though, probably through the county commission, to have Albany County request annexation into the community college district for the remainder of the funds to become available. So that's the state legislation side, and I'm simplifying it. There's other expectations and pieces, but those are really the big pieces to the WyoTech thing. So if we want the state funds, they've got to commit. There's still a big question in my mind about what happens in years 3 and 4, so the next biennium, as we've talked about today with House Bill 80 recalibrating once every 4 years. We need to have that funding stream essentially for 4 years. That question is yet to be addressed, but there are expectations within the current statute that we would essentially model what those short-term and long-term ongoing revenue would be. I think there's the expectation of the legislature that they'll get asked to provide those funds. And I would guess that there will be support for those things to do that. So that's on the state side. On the local side, then, I'm sure Madam Mayor will share some information and her thoughts. We've been working with the local community to figure out, okay, how exactly would that work and which way would we go? it really does appear that the only viable option to really provide ongoing local support, that was a requirement of ours in the prospectus. You know, we didn't dictate annexation, but it seems like the only real viable option for them to do that is going to be through the annexation of the county and the district and the levying of 4 or perhaps the 5th mill as well on the county to be able to provide that ongoing stream, just because of the current mills that sit on the city and the county, knowing that the current operating coffers of the city and the county can't provide that, and the complexities of what would or wouldn't happen with a special for a spot tax, a special purpose tax option with that. There's some challenges over there as the city and the county are looking at the renewal of the 5th penny, the 6th, and the 6th penny, and also the potential talk of a 7th penny special purpose economic development tax for acquisition of land. So that creates some significant challenges as well. So that's the community side of it right now. And then there's the Zenith, ECMC, so the parent company of Wyotech and their side. We, as you know, in our prospectus, we asked them to basically donate all of the assets of Wyotech to us, and then to essentially sublet the facilities that they have at extremely discounted rates. They have come back and said, assets, sure, that makes sense, we can do that, but have come back and said, no, we need to negotiate more on those lease rates with that. Essentially saying instead of taking 2 of the housing buildings, taking all 4, and then paying 25% of their current lease obligation through a sublease arrangement for 10 years, essentially, through the duration of their lease arrangement. And they've proposed an escalator for the 2 instructional buildings. The instructional buildings also present a interesting challenge in that those leases come up, one in 3 years and the other one in 5 years. And we've got to figure out a way to be able to either acquire those or to, I guess, continue leasing them if that would be an option. That requires additional state funding through CAPCON probably 2 years from now, so in the 2020 budget session. And then also figuring out if there's a revenue stream through the annexation that we can build some money up and then take some type of short-term loan share. So that's still a big question mark in my mind is what happens with those facilities. But thus far, ECMC has said, this is what we would like to see. We're still willing to have some conversation. So I think there's still a little give and take. So that's how the 3 pieces have kind of shaped up. And now, as I shared with you, I really, you say, Joe, what's your recommendation? I really got 3 options to put on the table. The first option is we move forward and we submit a proposal. They're due by March 9th, so next Friday, to the Wyoming Business Council, and it will come along side by side with a private proposal. There's a private proposal in development. It's going to be there. They're going to come along side by side. As I've expressed, I think, to numerous people, my concern with that is the perception that may ensue about a public-private competition if they're going side by side. And clearly there is interest within the legislature. I think it's predominantly within the legislature and a pocket of local folks in Laramie to really see this continue in private sector hands. I don't know if that's completely the case in the governor's office, and I think as Andy shared, or someone may share, may not be the community's perspective. Regardless, though, moving forward with dual proposals, they will be competing proposals. And the public sector will be competing with the private sector, and the business council will be asked to say which one makes more sense for Wyoming. The governor will be asked to say which one makes more sense for Wyoming. But that's option 1. We can move forward and we can go in. Option 2 is we say, hey, we laid out the requirements that were necessary within the prospectus. Those requirements have not been met already in 2 or 3 cases. One by ECMC coming back and saying, no, we need lease rates. 2, by the fact that we only have essentially 2 years of state funding figured out, not having the 4-year bridge concept. Knowing there's challenges with that. So the position we could say is that that's our best and final offer. It's on the table, but it doesn't seem to be met. And so we're going to back off and essentially pull out of this conversation. The 3rd option then is to say, hey, look, if there's an interest in the private sector proposal moving forward, maybe our position is essentially to just stand aside for now. Let that proposal come to the Wyoming Business Council, let them vet it, determine whether it has merit. Let them make a recommendation on that proposal only to the governor, and let him decide, does this make sense for Wyoming or doesn't? And give the private sector the full ability to perform on its own and stand on its own. Then if it doesn't, basically be ready to move in with an LCCC proposal as a solution when that is proven as not being viable. That allows, the private sector really to have the first go. It gets out of the public sector trying to compete with that, but it doesn't take us off the table and say, hey, we're not willing to negotiate, on some of these changes that have happened. The reality is when we set the prospectus down, we were really asking for what would be equivalent of about, I think, 2 mills per year from Albany County. The conversation of annexation actually creates additional revenue at 4 mills. That's about $414,000 per year. Just at 1 mill is 414,000. Sorry, right? So it does provide additional revenue stream that we weren't anticipating at the time. That makes some of these other things perhaps doable. So by basically developing a proposal and a timeline and waiting and saying, okay, give the private sector its shot, that still positions us to come in with a proposal to do something that doesn't work, but it also gives the full attention to the private sector if that's truly the interest that we think that works. And I just don't know. I know so little about it, I can't tell you one way or the other. The challenge we will be up against, and I think we're there anyways, to be quite honest, is the more we look at this, starting anything up in the fall, even if the decision were to switch next Friday, is going to be incredibly problematic for us. And so one of the things I believe we simply have to do is, if we move into this, is plan for an earliest of spring of 2019 start date. And I don't know what that looks like programmatically. I don't know how many students we could get. We were really hoping to capture those students that were planning to come. But we need to essentially start working on transition. And most importantly, if there is going to be an annexation election, we can't move forward with any type of sublease agreements, any type of recruitment, any type of major effort until we know whether the Albany County says, yeah, we're in or we're out. So to me, we can't have students plan to come in at the end of August or the 1st of September, knowing that election would likely occur on, I think, August 17th. So that means a fall entry is really off the table. And honestly, I think even a private sector proposal is going to figure that. Doesn't mean we would still have access to state money. We could still do some things up to that with staffing and with preparation and everything in anticipation. But essentially, if that vote were to go down, then it's essentially off the table. But that'd be Albany County's decisions to take that. So those are the options, and we really are at that point where I either need to put a full court press on with, when I say I mean Dr. and others to get this proposal ready to go to the business council by next Friday. We have most of the structure, but they are asking for additional things. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to stop there because I know there's significant conversation and questions about what the heck would annexation look like? Do we come in or do we not come in? This public-private competition piece. If you push me on what my recommendation would be, I really lean towards option 3. And I think that probably makes the most sense for the institution. But I'd love to hear your questions and thoughts. The only other piece I guess I didn't say within that statute, I still don't understand exactly how the election occurs. I have a better idea now, but your attorney's here and she might have some insight with that as well. What I know is,
We've read it, we need your attorney.
yeah, for all intents and purposes, really our deadline, our no-go deadline is May, I want to say. We have, I think it's 100 and some days before the election to actually call the election. So if we went forward, the governor says private sector doesn't work, yet LCCC works, we'll grant you. The county would have to pass a resolution essentially to request annexation. That hits your desks. You have 10 days to say we accept it or we don't accept it. If you accept it, you then have to essentially call for an election in Albany County. There's a very specific line in statute that says you're going to pay for it too.
Yeah.
To do that. And that would have to happen by that early May to get it on the August deadline. So that May piece is really our situation. So with that's where I'm at. That's kind of the pressure we're under. And as things are moving, I know a lot's happening, but that's sort of how I'm wrapping my mind around this. And I could probably argue all three options.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let's get the pressure off of you. Yeah, I think it is time to get the pressure off of you. You know, there's some great ifs here. One if, we don't know what the legislature is going to do. I think we really, it's very difficult. You know, well, I don't know if I want to hear what you think. It might not be good.
It is weird.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it's going to go all the way through. It could be, it still can be modified until the 12th hour. It's just the way the legislature works. That to me is a big if.
It certainly is.
Madam Council, that's the way I see it. It's a big if. I think another if has to do with the annexation election. You know, even though there's a lot of people that are really excited about what the people of Albany County are going to do, there is maybe another thing. We have some experience about that here.
Real recent.
Then, when it comes to the first option, that definitely, in my opinion, would be off the table. Because we are battling up against a private initiative, and it would be public as private. I don't think that's in the best interest of community colleges in the state or ours. The third one that you talked about, I don't think we should. The second one, I don't think we should walk away. We spent so much time working with the community, with the people over there, and it's part of our, I think, responsibility as a community college to work with the community, helping them with any type of major economic disaster that we come in. We can help through a higher education approach. So I don't see walking away. The third one definitely makes some sense. Because what we're basically doing is we're waiting to get somebody one in with the legislature, sure. And then we look at the situation about going forward with the annexation, whether we want to pay for that or not, but we have to. I thought the county commissioners would have to. But then when we get more information and read it in there, it's very clear that it's the community college district that we have to pay for the election. So relative to your options, I would be supportive. I would encourage the rest of them to be supportive of option 3. Then I have a comment later after we get through that option discussion about annexation. Which I think we do.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Don. I like option 3 the best for the exact same reasons that Trustee Erickson spelled out. I agree with that. I have nothing more to add.
Thank you very much. Is it okay if I stand over here? Podiums are my enemy. That's all right. Speak loud enough, those mics can pick everything. So
As long as she speaks loudly because they are recorded.
absolutely, I can do that. So thank you all very much for having me here tonight and for taking up this matter. If you'd asked me after the day when I was dealing with biotech closing, if we would be at this point in 3.5 months, I would have absolutely said no way. Government doesn't. So I am absolutely shocked to be at this point. And I think it's a reflection of not only the Laramie community and our ability to work with the Albany County Conflict as a whole group. So I have to say thank you very much. Couple of things. So first, I don't know if Dr. Schaefer has circulated this to you, but there is resolutions from both the City Council and the County Commission. And I encourage you all to read these resolutions because the resolutions speak specifically to what the city and the county think are the advantages of LCCC being over in Laramie and taking over the biotech operations. And I think that's an important piece. As I've told Dr. Schaefer numerous times, from my position as mayor, this is a really bad situation for Laramie. right? But sometimes we get the best advances out of taking advantage of adversity. And WildTech is the catalyst right now for a much bigger conversation, and that is community college in Laramie, for my community. But it's also a bigger conversation about the opportunities for provided training and what programs could be stood up with this space and this instructional space and the opportunity that this presents. So I want to encourage everybody to think about it. I know there is a lot of conversation about the private proposal that's kind of sprung out of the air in the last couple of weeks that wasn't there when we've been working with LCCC diligently for the last few months. And I know that's a difficult thing for everybody to talk about, the public versus the private. I have a couple of concerns that I want to share with you, not to choose between the two. But first of all, the legislation is written that the governor's decision has to be made by April 1st. I'm not sure that option 3 that you guys are discussing provides for LCCC to come back. I'm also not sure that that's really the best way to go about this. I think that if we go through my preferred option as mayor is option 1. The community desperately wants you to submit this proposal. We have had nothing but positive feedback from the community members. I have an email box full of emails asking. The community wants to do this. And I know you guys have had a rough go with elections. And I feel it. As Dr. Schaefer pointed out, we have the 5th penny to renew this year, the 6th penny to renew this year, a group that wants us to put the 7th penny on the ballot to purchase some land. That's not what I signed up for, but they're bad. Nobody told me about that part. So we're going to have some good discussions, but I will tell you that I think Laramie is a little bit different community. We are a community of educators over there, where more than 50% of the residents have a direct connection to either the community college or the University of Wyoming or WildTech. And I would garner about 75 to 80 have an indirect. Their spouse works for the university or something. We are a community of educators. We constantly approve this stuff. We might be the poorest county in the state, but we will approve the 5th penny and the 6th penny every time without fail. We approved a $25 million bond for the high school. Nobody else in the state has done that. Laramie supports education. And I encourage you guys to think about that. I know this is a huge topic. But one of the things that I have constantly heard through these conversations, and we have talked about it in the working group that helped put this together, is what is the best thing going long term? WildTech has shut down twice in spectacular fashion in the last few years under a for-profit model. As the mayor of the community representing our constituents, I can tell you that we don't want to do this again. I don't want to have a conversation in 2 years or even 5 years that the educational foundation, whether it's regulations from the Department of Education that cause so many problems at WildTech, as the for-profit models are being required to reach a higher standard. If those shift again, and it causes a business model collapse, or a $25,000 per student for-profit tuition for a 9-month certificate just isn't sustainable. There's a whole other conversation about that. Whatever that is, I don't want to put the community through another WildTech closure. In that realm, it would be better to shut the doors and take our licks right now. We've already started the process of dealing with the additional job loss and going through that transition. So what we are interested in as a community is sustainability. No one of the arguments for the for-profit proposal is the economic impact. We bring students from outside the state, they come into Laramie. As the Laramie mayor, I will tell you students buy 2 things. They buy gas and they buy food. Sometimes they buy fruit beverages, but no. But there is a limited economic impact. But what we are interested in a community is a more sustainable long-term impact. And we see that being available through workforce development, through different programmings, through offering what potentially WildTech offers with diesel tax and taking that to 21st manufacturing tech and offering it to a whole new group of students in the state that have never had access to it. They could never pay a $30,000 tuition payment with WildTech. But by golly, with a Hathaway scholarship or paying community college price, they can get access to this kind of program. So this is a Laramie issue to a certain extent, but we could take our licks and shut it down and move on as a community. But I think there's so much opportunity that could be provided here. And the sad thing is that as the mayor and the city council, other than getting my constituents' support, we really have anything that we can do to help push this along, right? I want to talk a little bit about the annexation. I think that's a conversation that's been moving in Laramie that we probably should have had 10 years ago. ACC operates in Laramie. We are continuing, ACC is out of space. You know, from Mr. Cato, who has faithfully served the Laramie community as the ex officio on this board, the challenges that we have in ACC, there is a tremendous demand for community college programming over there from both a UW remediation, but also community workforce development and other things that we can't meet. Because we've spent a lot of time in the last couple of years going back and forth with Dr. Wallman, he was over, and we just started him about land and how we help LCC expand because we don't have a revenue source. So here we are talking about annexation. And although again, Wildtech is the catalyst, it's a much bigger conversation. What does this district look like, and what does opportunity in Laramie look like if the community is successful in checking the ballot box yes on annexation? What does that look like? If you assess the 4 mills, and assuming that this board would assess the 5th mill, which I understand from Dr. Schaefer is pretty standard practice, you would generate, we're not a rich community, but about $2.5 million a year in funds and revenue that we don't have right now. The city and the county can't possibly pull that out of our budgets right now. But if the taxpayers check the box yes, then that provides whole new opportunities. I think there's some challenges with the leases going forward and capital construction acquisition money or whatever that might entail. And I think we can work through those if we can get this election through. So my ask to the trustees is to submit this proposal to the Laramie community and for the statewide opportunity and submit it. And you're going to get a letter from me, also going to the Laramie Business Council and the governor's office, outlining the community's position and what we feel are the advantages going forward. And I would also say that if this goes through and the governor approves to get $5 million to the community and we get the resolution for election, we get it on the ballot, and the voters say no, if there's a for-profit group that wants to come and snatch ECMC's property up, if they can make it pencil, it'll still be there. ECMC is tied into those leases for quite some time. That property's not going anywhere. And my consideration that I have been given from ECMC is that they're in no hurry to do anything. If we don't pick this up, they don't care. They'll shut it down. So if a for-profit group wants to come and pick it back up, they certainly have that opportunity. I don't know that the reverse situation with the way the legislation is written is possible. So I think it's possible for LCCC to put in this thing and go down this road, and if it doesn't work and the voters say no, which I don't think is going to happen, then the for-profit can pick it up. But if you sit back and you let the for-profit go first, and that April 1st deadline expires and the for-profit falls apart or doesn't show up at all, because we still don't know that they're going to show up at all. There's talk, but there's no hard proposals. There's no information yet that I'm aware of. If they don't show up and the April 1st deadline expires, then we're back at the legislature knocking on the door trying to convince them to reopen a campus instead of continuing and just doing the transition. And I don't know what that looks like. I would certainly defer to Senator Medicott on her thoughts for the legislature because I didn't bring my crystal ball. But anyways.
Putting it on in live institutions.
Yeah. So that's my thoughts. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know the election piece and the annexation piece is a big conversation, but I have faith in my community of educators that this is what they want. And in all of the discussion, I have not heard one negative comment. Neither has the council in several
years. Mr. Chairman, Andy, I have a question for you. First of all, thank you for your very impassioned and well put together presentation to us. That I feel your heart and soul in it. So, and logic also. So thank you. Is the legislature or your legislators aware of the position of the city of Laramie that you just articulated to us?
They are. I have communicated that to them. They have received the resolution. They've gotten that in detail, and I think it's been shared pretty widely as well. They are. And well.
Okay, so you have presented that to the legislature. Okay, I need to think a little bit. Thank you.
I have like a detailed question. Maybe it's too deep. Talking buildings and money, but in the essence, it boils down to people in the biotech right now, doing teaching, those kinds of things. So what do we know about those human resources their intention in this whole process. Because people aren't just sitting by and vacuum wondering, they're also thinking, this is going away, should I go away? But what do you know about that?
I'm happy to defer to Dr. Hammond or Dr. Tabor if they want to. I can touch on what I've been told by Biotech. You know, when they announced there was a plan to start to let people go, there's been a group that's already been put out in the district. And certainly that is going through, and there's certain points as we go through the next 6 months where groups are released. There's some people that'll be on campus. If nothing happens, there'll be people on campus to maintain the buildings. And there's requirements, there's records, there's placement requirements for students kind of going down the line. One of the things that we've talked about extensively is, are we doing this to save 70 jobs? And the answer is, at the end of the day, no. As much as we want to save the jobs, we think that this is more like a reboot in a new kind of futuristic direction. So we may lose some of those employees, and I know some of the employees of Biotech that have had opportunity have gone ahead and taken those opportunities. But I would defer to Dr. Hammond and Dr. Schaefer on kind of the rebuild scenario that we had discussed. We may lose 70 jobs, or we may only keep 20 on staff right now, but we can potentially grow that back up with new faculty in the program.
There would be essence of intellectual capital to do that rebuild like you're talking about.
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Salazar, I believe so. You know, that this, it's just like the students. The further we get away from the closure announcement, the fewer those folks are going to be waiting and still in the wings. But they're teaching out this last class, you know, and that goes all the way through June. There are still faculty and staff that are interested, and I think in some ways are even sort of waiting to see what happens, because their passion, their heart, and in some ways their family connections are to Laramie. Regardless of what happens in the transition period, though, it'll be critical to bring people on as soon as possible, go through the competitive process. So do I think they'll all be there? No. Do I think there will be enough of them there if we don't let too much of a gap go between essentially May to August up to it? If we let too much go without engaging them, we're just going to keep losing them, because they are. I mean, those technical faculty are heavily sought after. Maybe not in Laramie, but in other colleges, and I know the staff are already sort of looking at it. So we think we can engage them through the process, but the further we go, it's going to just get more difficult. Good question.
Just, can we talk about the annexation? So, what are the terms of the annexation? With 7 trustees, 2 trustees, we would have 5. I guess it's the portion of, is everybody moving around at that time? Or how does that, I just want to be specific on the statute.
It only affects, it's only relevant to the enlarged districts.
So like the 3 that are coming up, should we go to that?
The 3 positions on this board, no.
So it'd be 7 here and 2 there?
Potentially, yes.
Oh.
So
it'd be adding 2 positions.
the board of the enlarged district shall be comprised of not more than 7 members.
Okay.
And that is, so my quick review of the statute, because I've been having conversations and I'm aware of. So just this afternoon indicates to me that when it is written, is you're referred to as the community college district board, and then the other district, what would be on the county, would be considered the enlarged district. So it has the ability to have additional members, but it wouldn't affect more membership now. You also have to redistrict as part of that based on members. There's a statutory reference. And so I can't speak to it directly about referencing statutes, but it's possible that some areas would within scope of it. But it wouldn't require people leaving the board terms. But it's possible that once we chose that path, accepted the commissioner's resolution, when we looked at what those districts look like, does that answer everything in total?
So it would be 7 members total.
I think it's confusing since nobody's done this.
You get 2 more. So the whole district, which, so.
We have not.
We have 7.
These 7.
You can't have any more than 7.
So So the district would just get pushed in, so some could be part. Could just be all that. Yeah.
So 2 more trustees would be added to this board, actually. And then we would district that, so your areas would be bigger. Too, and expand into Albany County. They would expand. I don't know.
That's, Mr. Chairman, that's actually an interesting read. It could very well be that way where you could end up with up to 7 trustees from the enlarged district and here. So my read was know that you would actually have to, every position would have to re-solicit through an application to the county. What's interesting is it refers to the county commission as singular. And I have to imagine that refers to the county commission being Albany County Commission, which would maybe say that is a separate process, but just the general feedback we've received is that the district would become the 2 counties. The simple redistricting would be one of those districts would be Albany County, one of the sub-districts would be Albany County, one would be Laramie County, based on the population calculation. 2 trustees for the enlarged district would come from Albany, 5 from here. But the piece that is really not clear in there is, so how do you reset the existing board? And that's where a lot of the confusion is. And maybe it is because you end up with 2 separate boards. That doesn't seem logical, but when you read the language, it's not clear what would happen with the sitting board.
I'm not sure anybody thought we'd take up on. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think it is very confusing, and I think that our legal counsel needs time to really examine this particular statute and also the references to others. Because I am not an attorney, counsel, but I read it just the way you that there would be 2 from there would be a sub-district in Albany County. I know it's not necessarily.
Yeah.
That's where we're
Which is
confused.
really good. So I'm aware of other areas in the state that face a challenge that's because their districts span counties and rural locations, and they follow the statutory rule that they need to have somebody, a trustee elected from every sub-districts. The result of that is some of those more rural locations in there who really want to serve, and so they can strong people to try to fill those positions, which doesn't obviously result in the best boards. So, but that is a may in the statute to sub-district it. And so if you choose not to do that, which requires you to do it based on population, you can disregard that. Now, I don't know the effect of not doing that, but my suggestion would be not to do that. But I don't know if that effect would be.
So we don't know the answer. Is that what you saying?
Right. And I don't know the statutes with that.
How can we get to the answer? Right?
Yeah.
There's some amendments in this too,
Yeah.
So I could do a little bit more research and provide more about that. Is it on Friday? The only reason I know it's
Mr. Chair, I think that is the right action for our legal counsel to take more time to give us a memo on really what the approach is going to be in terms of the sub-districting of the 2 counties. We sit around the table here and we've got different opinions, this and that and so forth. I think the major thing that we need to do right now is look at either the first, second, and third option that you're talking about. Because the annexation and the sub-districting is very confusing. And I would hope that we would just wait on that and get more information from you on that.
So the other way I interpret this is you can design your sub-districts. So you can design the sub-districts and so you can equitable to the addition of Albany County, Laramie County.
Trustee Kane.
I was just 1, 2, or 3 to deal with acquisition. That have to happen. Understanding. What it is.
But we're only, Mr. Chair, we're only in a work session here. But we're giving guidance as to where to proceed with the 3 options.
I think right now, I can make an order. Together. Hard one. I can say rather, I mean, I can get you the memo
Right.
on the annexation process, but the commissioners will have to vote. I'm sure you want
Mr. Chairman, that's the important piece, is you still have the opportunity to say, no, annexation does not make sense for us at this time. Now, at that time, Albany County could court Western Wyoming Community College or Casper to do that. I don't know that they would want to, but you do have that opportunity to essentially say no. So moving forward with the proposal there's still a lot of procedural steps.
Yeah.
I guess I
Trustee Cato. Trustee Salzman.
Oh, yeah, well, since we're on the legal stuff, and it's gonna be investigating some stuff, there's one other issue that I read in, the link to the Wyoming statute 2118-310. And what? Pardon?
All right, good, great.
You're sounding like a senator now.
No, I don't know. But I was reading, and I won't give the section that talks about what happens and being come from a business background and having been through when you close up business. It really talks about the idea of exit strategies. And it sounds like if you do the annexation, where I'm reading here, that the Albany County voters can vote for the annexation and the tax themselves, but then they could come back 4 years later and say, we're done, it didn't work out. That's what the way we do this.
Can you
Within
say where you're looking at?
It's section, I'll just hand it to you.
Keep going.
So, another thing that I'm just thinking of, granted the required cooperation of the crossing lines here, but I see it would be necessary and potentially still possible to waive some of these amendments from the state to make it for a period of time.
How far was that?
Well, right now, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Ketchum, we're actually updating a prospectus to show this delayed start. Right now, there's 2 big questions. When we get out to year 4, we actually show about a $300,000 or $400,000 deficit there on out. Most of that is because we've built in the assumption that we would have to take some type of debt out to the local share for the acquisition of the buildings. So if they annex, one of the concerns I think is that coming in with an annexation request and turning around in 2 years and having should maybe a little too much. So instead, can we start to use some of those revenues to build money up in the first couple of years to pay the building debt downstream? The problem is the building debt downstream really pushes us in the red. The piece that's a wild card though is we don't know what the state funding does after. For right now, what we're modeling, we think we're modeling like we don't get an additional $500,000. And when you add 200,000 square feet plus the enrollments, it's gotta be more than that. We're just not figuring out how we calculate that. So I think we get a whole lot closer. And actually, if we fix that piece, the annexation and the additional mills by Albany County or the district, we actually show there may be revenue for us to actually invest in program startups. So the picture gets better as we go forward. The first 2 years, it's a wash, slightly wash in the first year, a slight net in the first year because we've got the state revenue but not the expense. A wash in the second year, it still looks like $5 million. Year 4, if we figure that out, it looks pretty promising. That's with conservative.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would
encourage the trustees to really strongly look at option number one. My thought process is that I had an opportunity to be on that committee, on the Perspectives Committee from day one. Had the opportunity to also to tour the facilities with the mayor and county commissioners, University of Wyoming, a number of folks to look at when they announced that they were closing, to go through the facilities and take a look at what could we do and who could step forward, maybe who could take the leadership and put a project together to basically keep Oil Tech in place. And it was this college. It was this college that spent the resources, the time, organized the people. For the last, for at least 1 month, it was a hard push. And so I felt pretty committed to the fact that this college put together Perspectives. We stepped forward. We did a lot of thinking about how to do this. We're modeling like we do this community college and the 6 other community colleges, meaning that we're looking at the funding model. As I think Rick pointed out today in our dinner work session, 54% comes from the state right now, is what this college relies on for funding. And we talk about enrollment. Well, we have a piece in Laramie that could really address some enrollment. Now, we might not be able to get the funds for it, which is a real struggle, I know, what's going on with the state right now. But as we talk about enrollment, when we talk about vocational education maybe, technical skills, about where to put our dollars and resources to either extend enrollment or to keep it from decreasing or picking up enrollment, I think there's some real opportunities for it. And as the mayor had said, very passionate, very well, I mean, it's such a great job of laying this all out, is that we have tried to get land, we have tried to grow the campus, we have tried to do things that, from an academic standpoint, to better learn. But we haven't been able to do anything in the career or technical skills. Not a thing. And this is, I think, a real opportunity for the community to buy into a great program, a great brand, a great vocational school, as well as we can do some planning I think long-term in the technical skills area. It might not look like 10 years from now, all biotech, diesel and automotive and welding. We might do light manufacturing and a number of other things. But now the city and the county are engaged. And we have a community college in Laramie, in Albany County, that takes on a lot like what you have here. Because this college does unbelievable things for this community. From your career technical stuff to academic programs, you are so plugged in. We don't have that scope and depth. I would really like to get to it. That would be a great goal, I think. So I hope that we strongly consider one, just because, and I'm a private industry guy. I mean, I come from that background, that's why I preach, but I just see, as the mayor said, long-term stability and sustainability. And what this community college and the model looks like going down the road. I think it makes a lot of sense for this model to work long term.
Well, I have two questions. Well, I may have one or not, but right now I have two questions. And I'd like to know, and Joe, maybe you can answer this, or maybe Dr. Hammond. So what would it take for us to put together this proposal? I mean, you're ready to do the proposal. And how much work would it take to do that? Certainly possible.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Soto, really the proposal is just taking our perspectives, updating the performance, and then meeting the specific requirements that they asked for in the statute, and Dr. Ammons put together already. So I don't think meeting the ninth deadline is, and then next week, but I don't think that's a problem.
So my second question is, so we put forth a proposal when we're selected. What if we get that and then there's some other piece falls through in the future? So the election doesn't, we don't get the results of all. Then
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Soto, so the way we would have to structure it is essentially that becomes the next point. And we would, if the election would happen, we would essentially step out and while tech would close and then take it back sort of to which is UCMC figuring out what they do. Because if the election didn't pass, the remainder of the state funds wouldn't come forward. And really the bigger issue is the ongoing local funding that this viably itself. So we would step out, and that's why everything we would do would have to sort of hinge on that election. We would get into and actually formally sign sublease agreements. We would recruit. We may have to do bring some staff on, but those would be conditional contracts. With that date. I mean, it would be structured around that date. But across this entire thing, and trustees always are these, we would have exit strategies if something fell through. We'd have to.
if any of those pieces fell through, like the negotiation with each of those we'd have an exit strategy in each of those. Is that right?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Soto, we'd have to, and that's probably the first piece, is we'd have to come to agreement with terms with ECMC, and I think there's room to do that on what they want, but even that, the terms would be conceptual until we executed any type of specific agreements, transactions, which again would probably come for that 17th election, because if the election fails, we would execute, and my guess is they would not bequeath us the assets.
Mr. Chairman, as much as I appreciate and respect what the mayor said and what Trustee Cagle said, very much so, and I understand what they're saying, as much as I respect that, our responsibility on this board is Laramie County Community College, not the city of Laramie. We're not elected officials from the city of Laramie. We're elected officials for Laramie County Community College. And I think we need to make sure that we are taking care of our college properly. We already said what we needed to have this thing happen, and the legislature did not give it to us. The city of Laramie and Albany County have not given it to us. We said what we needed, and we have not received it. And so I think if we just then say, okay, well, then I guess the legislators that were elected to represent Albany County maybe had, maybe have a different choice or want something a little bit different. I don't think we should go up against private industry. I think that bothers me a lot, that we would do that. I think we're asking for trouble. So I am still a proponent of, as much as I respect both of what they said and understand their love for their community, I think our responsibility is here, and I still like options.
Mr. Chair, we're not walking away if we go with option 3. We're not walking away from
Correct,
American
that's
County.
correct.
I think what I hear Trustee Little saying, what I have said is that from a community college perspective, it's part of a community college system in the state of Wyoming. I don't think it's in the best interest of this college to be going up against the possible private sector proposal. I think that has ramifications and consequences that we may not be aware of at this point. And Mayor, I think we're 100% behind you. Mm-hmm. I think there's at least a couple of us have a disagreement about the option. Because the option one, another part is that when we first got into this and we made this proposal and prospectus and so forth, then the legislature gets together and then all of a sudden we have a ringer. The legislature comes in with, okay, now we're going to let the private sector get in on this as well. Okay, and so I think we've got to be somewhat responsive to the impact consequences of going up against a private proposal with the legislatures. A lot of the legislators don't even have colleges in their counties, and to provide more money for colleges, we're going to continue looking for money from the legislature. I disagree with, I totally agree with you again, Trustee Law. I would hope that we would go with option 3. Again, as an amen, we're not walking away.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, this is really hitting my heart, all this discussion. And I think for me, there are still too many questions without answers. And so I also would hope. And if it's going to work out, it will work out. The private industry will back off, and then we still can make a decision quickly. But I just think there are too many unanswered questions for me.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to maybe a better explanation of what are the perceived problems with filing the proposal and going up against president.
I'll give you one.
I can get one too.
Well, you give yours, I'll give mine, and maybe others. I'll put a political hat on. I think it's just running up the wrong way on the street. I think we want to go with the flow, and this would be really working against the political aspects of this state, in my opinion. Because I don't think that the conservatism of the legislature is going to be that responsive to us competing with a private sector proposal. It's really political from my point of view.
Yeah, mine's more of a personal example, just knowledge of the situation that happened when they were trying to sell the old police department, and there was one bidder, the Archdiocese of Cheyenne, one bidder. I may not have the numbers right. They bid 1.1 billion for it. One of the local realtors said he had a consortium of private investors that would like to bid, and he didn't like the process that they went through. So they closed it down and reopened it again. And when they reopened the bidding, there was one bidder still. It was the Archdiocese. But this time they had to pay 1.3 or 4 million instead of 1.1 million. So that's a case of, is this private person who's wanting to do it a real person? Or like who you might have said, a ringer, somebody who's just come in to make it seem like this is a more valuable proposition. I don't know. I think wait and see. Option 3 still gives you the flexibility to do what you might need to do, and maybe a proposal, still go build your proposal. Be ready with it. Don't wait. So it's not saying option 3 don't do anything. It's option 3 build a proposal, and then see what happens. Be ready to jump in with your option 1. Modified option 1.
Mr. Chair, I think this board is a board of risk takers, and part of that shows by the bond issue we put forward, the risk we took in our own community. And the voters spoke to us that they did not want to do that. And that is one of the pieces that if they don't pass the 4%, and then they actually have an option of taking that off every 4 years.
Just, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Merrill, they have an option within the first 4 years, again, by the resolution of the county commission or a petition of 15% of the electorate, to put it back on the ballot to basically so remove from the district. If the ballot fails, they're still part of the district. If it passes, they can't. After 4 years, though, they're permanently part of the district. So it's basically an exit clause that would say if this annexation didn't work, should you go back essentially be district. they would actually have to call an election through petition and pass it as a resolution. So then say, we all vote now that it wasn't a good idea, we want to fight it. And that's probably one of the bigger.
I would imagine once this proposal gets in, John will have. Say this is. It's before we go there. Doesn't work, we'll probably ask for some other private. Would be like.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Ketchum, the statute actually, the April 1st deadline is the deadline which the business council would have to advance a recommendation to. In conversations with the CEO of the business council, I don't think it's really clear what the parameters of the sidewalks on that recommendation. I think there's actually some room to grow there. And then the governor has the options then to essentially decide after that. Since it does not dictate what happens if the governor says there's not enough, there's nothing there, there's still the flexibility then those awards. And so I think there's some flexibility in there, but it's a question mark to do that. One way or the other. I believe, and I've spoken with folks in the governor's office, I've not spoken with the governor specifically on this. They would probably also prefer seeing two proposals simultaneously. But I don't know that the way the statute is written that makes it from April 1. There's nothing you can do after that. It's just a deadline for the council, the business council to make a recommendation. I think it's pretty bad.
Mr. Chairman. So, pretty vague is also the annexation statute. As you all have concluded, I have legitimate, very serious concerns about it. Consequently, I don't know how I can ever apply this for it.
Oh, I see.
Seek advice from
I'm just putting it up now, but that's a fact. Looking at these statutes, the effect on constructive on you, the board of trustees. I'll give you a more detailed memo, but that's probably.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if I can, so you've gotten to know me, have pretty strong recommendations and something to react to. I struggle with this one, and I'm at that point where I really will serve at your pleasure and take your guidance on this one. I could argue probably for all three of the options. I could argue most strongly for option 1 and option 3. And you said go forward and put a proposal in. We could certainly do that and then do everything we could to message it in a way to say this is not our intent to compete with the private sector. As I think about downstream, we've had this conversation. I encourage you to think about this too. If you envision our presence in Albany County 20 years from now, what does that look like without local support? It looks pretty much like it looks right now, which, as Trustee Cato said, isn't exactly where we want to go, but we know the limitations of facilities, we know the limitations of revenue sources to grow programming there. While we might get some incremental success along the way, it's going to look pretty much like it does now, I think. So if inevitably an ongoing revenue stream, potentially annexation is where we would get and want to see us in 20 or 25 years, we may very well be missing the catalyst of a lifetime to make that done now. Is the timing right? Maybe not. But as I look down the road, there's got to be some type of local skin in the game. In fact, the state's going to struggle with this down the road. Campbell County did this last year as they grappled with that sales tax for Gillette College. So I could argue, you plow forward, you put a proposal in, and we say this is where we need to get eventually. It's a little bit sooner than what we thought we might be able to, but here's an opportunity to do that. I do worry, though, on the flip side about the perception and memory. People don't long memory and remember things. And what I worry is that if it's even perceived that an okay private proposal that could have gotten legs was trumped because we did a fantastic job on our proposal, which we would do. It would be very solid. We've stimulated this conversation from our work. How would that reverberate State House with the private down the road, and what would people perceive? And that's why I keep thinking, let that proposal live and die on its own merit. In many ways, I would probably share the mayor's perception that it would likely die. I'm just not seeing viability there. But let it live and die on its own merit. Be prepared then to step in as the preferred solution only after that one's been vetted. Yes, it impacts the timeline. It probably doesn't give the business council or the governor, a quick easy out of the private proposal. But as I said, that may be the more safe bet politically, and I think it does not take our option to step in completely. So as you say, I've done this for the last, Brady and I have been doing this. We can talk ourselves in circles back and forth on these over and over and over again, and that's why ultimately it's your guidance. I can work with either of them. I can't tell you which one I think is the right option.
Well, we're trying to tell you.
We are, and Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. One of the concerns that I continue to have is the dates and the requirements that are set forth in the legislation. They're very vague. And one of the biggest things we keep going, this is an opportunity for a lifetime. If you wanted a catalyst for a Laramie election to annex into the district, you got it. You got it. The emotions are running very high in Laramie right now. We have lost 400 jobs in Laramie because of government cuts. In the University of Wyoming, Allen County School District, the city of Laramie, Allen County. They don't want to lose any more jobs, and they certainly don't want to lose the biotech institution and the training it provides in the community. So if the board is leaning towards wanting to step back, which I again, my preference is option one, I could ask you guys to take that risk and send that message, the Laramie community send the message to you guys of what they want. And I struggle personally as the mayor, how do I weigh the 4 people that showed up that decided 2 weeks ago they wanted to buy this and totally changed the legislation and the legislature when they weren't here 4 months ago when we were doing all of this work? And how do I let 4 people trump the will of the community that's been going on for 3 or 4 months over in the Laramie community? I can't, as the mayor, my job is to represent the community. Okay? I understand private business, we deal with that all the time. But you guys haven't been here. They didn't step forward in November or December or January. They literally showed up 10 days ago. And that's hard. That's really, really hard to take on the community side. The community is very passionately behind this. And so one of the things I would ask you is to not lose this opportunity. So if you guys will submit, the business council said they want those proposals by March 9th. That's next Friday. Timeline is something we have all struggled with during this transition. It has moved faster than any of us are necessarily comfortable with, just because of the circumstances. So I don't want to miss that window of opportunity. I would like clarification from the business council as well as the governor's office before you make a decision that if you do not submit by March 9th, that they're still going to consider that somehow. I want to reiterate, there is no private business proposal right now. There's just a lot of talk. And what happens on March 9th when nothing is delivered to the business council? This board has potentially given up a very stellar opportunity to expand and generate revenue for 20 or 25 years of development in Albany County that I've lived in Laramie for 20 years. I've never seen the perfect stew to go into the community college district. So I would ask you guys not to go for option 3 unless we have absolute assurance from the governor's office and the business council that they will still, if the no for-profit proposal materializes or it just falls apart, that they are still going to take LCCC's proposal at the beginning of April as a second. So I think that that's very, very important because if the governor's office says, no, the business council said March 9th, we want proposals by March 9th, you're in or you're out, then I'm going to ask this board to be in.
That's good. So Matt, is it possible that this 4-person entity does not submit a proposal?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Is that what you're kind of suggesting?
Absolutely is. We don't have any concrete evidence. We don't have a business plan or proposal from those guys right now. They're working on it, but they don't have it yet. So until I see something, I can't respond to it. Until I see it, I don't know that it exists. And I don't want to be on March 9th at 4:59 p.m. calling Dr. Schaefer going, there's still nothing. There's still nothing. Can you get your board together? Please send it in. I don't want to be in that situation.
Okay, so let me ask another question. Since this is a supposedly due, is this going to be a best and final offer kind of negotiation where it's going to go back and forth? Because the business side doesn't think like how community colleges think, the government think. They think that's my initial offer. I can come in with another one. I can lobby behind the scenes and get what I want.
My understanding of the process, and Dr. Schaefer, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's just submit your proposal, and the things that the Business Council wants to look at are outlined in that statute that's in the budget right now. You know, long-term impact, jobs, educational opportunities, programming opportunities, all of that stuff, and that's what they want to weigh. That's what Business Council is going to use to weigh and go forward. So there is a huge community piece to this as well. And again, you know, we'll submit for the community what the desire of the community is from the county commission and the city council and the comments that we receive from the community. We'll send that all to the governor with the proposals.
My last question. Can't guarantee it. So say business council says yes, LCCC, I'll pay. Is it possible this EAMC or can say we don't care what they said? We're going with whatever we want. We can get better. Or we don't take none of the offers.
My understanding, Christy, is that they're a private entity. They're certainly not bound to us in any way, shape, or form. The ECMC's, when we started these conversations with ECMC, their board is dedicated to providing nonprofit ongoing education. They have a slightly different mission, which is why, and I want to be clear, maybe that's not clear to the board, WildTech didn't close because it wasn't working financially. WildTech closed because they got caught up in ECMC's closing of 25 other schools that are, most of their other holdings in their schools look like the IBMC that's in Old Circuit City building here in Cheyenne. Those are the rest of the school holdings they had, and then they had WildTech on top of it. They decided they didn't want to be so they absolutely have the right to decide to do what they want. But from the beginning, they have told me that they want to transition to a nonprofit governmental entity. And that was the message we got for 4 months. And then this business proposal, these business guys showed up and started to talk. And ECMC has the right to change their mind or whatever that is. But I share some serious skepticism, which I've shared with them, to be completely candid. It's really hard to make a for-profit institution pencil and to get financing. And if you're looking at financing an institution on venture capital, that gives me a whole lot of heart palpitations about what this is going to be in 2 or 3 years. If you can't get traditional financing anymore for a for-profit university, what does that mean in terms of? So we are totally at ECMC's mercy, but they have been, I think, good faith partners in negotiating and trying to get this transition to a nonprofit education institution, and they have been very candid. The LCCC fits that the community college very well. We just don't have Alvin County Community College in Laramie. Nor have we ever had those discussions. I know there's a little bit of a trepidation about Laramie might have a vote in a couple of years and pull out of the district. We don't have the property taxes. We don't generate the revenue and the ability. We don't have the population to stand up our own college. It makes absolutely every sense to really work with LCCC with Western. No one work with West.
Or Casper.
No, I don't think they're joining.
They're not in
Yeah,
your
out of the county, so it's just but this is really where it makes sense. And also, I want to also comment. I know that you guys are trustees elected by Laramie County. As an elected official, you know I'm here doing my job for the Laramie community, right? You guys are here to do your jobs for Laramie County. And I fully respect that. I absolutely understand your position. But you have a chance to send a message to the Laramie community. You guys have come over and you've extended, you've been in the Laramie community for 30 years, Butch?
Oh, more than
40
that.
years, probably longer than I've been alive. And
You should be that.
so LTRC has been over in Laramie for a very long time, doing wonderful things with W, and it started to expand. And there's no way forward for that relationship to really develop the program, to develop the program without annexing into the district. They're not helpful. I can't provide another case that's better than this one for the Laramie community to check the box, yes. And I also want to add to that campaign, we're not going to ask you guys to do the heavy lifting. We'll have a group in there.
Why'd you let her come over? This is really hard.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think a couple things have come to light. And I'm still for option 3 with an addendum. Seriously, Mayor, I would not want to see us submit a proposal, even if we don't know for sure whether the private sector is going to come in with one. Now, if we find out that the private sector is not going to go in with one, then I think we're ready to go. I would think. And then another thing that's coming to light is we need to learn more about this annexation statute. And if there needs to be some changes, if we have to make some changes, amendments to it, that we make these amendments. I think that I'm supportive at least of Albany County becoming part of our district. It would be the first one in the state. And we've got a good deal of history with Laramie. So I would hope that in addition to discussing this submission, that we also look at the annexation statute and whatever our attorney thinks that we should do down the road to modify that so that we can take care of some of our concerns. The sloppy language, I think that's what it is, that sloppy language.
So, yeah, so there's a couple ideas I have, if it's possible. These provisions, these annexation provisions have to be altered.
Oh,
I'm kidding, it does. It has to happen. Or we can't.
Is that illegal?
Yeah, it happened in
Yeah.
It would happen in the legislature, where we would have to I'd ask to have these provisions repeated.
In the session?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? Because I know we're very late in the session. I don't know that we can get an addendum on the legislation right now. I necessarily want to open up that biotech. Something the package again. Certainly defer to the expert in the room. But is it possible to have annexation language where the Laramie votes in the district, but delays trustee elections for a year or something along those lines, so that we can have time to address this? Because also in that statute is the provision that in December, after this has gone through, there's a report back to the Joint Education Committee, I believe. And one of those requirements is what other changes do you need to the Wyoming Community College statutes? And that's in there. So there's already some potential avenues for discussion. So I have to admit, I spent entirely too much time hanging out.
So mid switches houses, you could make that.
What's that?
So mid switches houses, the senator. Language to essentially suspend previous statute.
We're making conforming amendments to make the incentive available.
So it's out of like.
Mr. Chairman.
I don't know. There's a lot of underscore, maybe.
Could we possibly direct Dr. Schaefer or our council to contact the business council to find exactly out what they're looking for and the dead drop date? If they say we have to have both proposals, or if we'll look at the private proposal first, because I don't know what they're gonna say, but can we get some clarification on that piece? In order, so that we can then act accordingly? Is that?
And Mr. Chairman, trustee Kale, that's what after trustee Ketchum and so we're just it's on, for expediency's sake. One of the things you could direct me to do, thinking out loud, so, is basically say, okay, submit the proposal and meet there. They've requested March 9th. There's nothing in statute that says it has to be by March 9th. Let's say they can only consider our proposal after they've considered and made a determination on any private sector proposal. That's your directive, and if they decide to then advance both side by side, you essentially can say, we can say, you got it, it's sitting in there. If one doesn't show up, you've got the other proposal sitting there with you. But we want you to process, vet, and make a recommendation to the governor of the private sector one before you advance a recommendation on the public sector one. You meet the deadlines, you're in there, they can essentially fast track the review of the private sector piece. And that's the only way I can see getting everything into them and hopefully letting them have time. But their preference is gonna be to weigh both and kick them both up and say, okay, Governor, you figure this out. And that's the piece I don't know that we're comfortable with. But I agree, we don't wanna miss the deadline where they say, no, there's no private sector, it doesn't make sense, but now we don't have enough time to actually get them in that, right?
For purposes of clarity, it is not possible for us to have 12 classes.
Though that it's not possible, it would not be my recommendation for staff to do it for us. It would be incredible. I'm not envisioning, because a private sector would have to come in and get accreditation for those programs, unless it was truly completely off the books and just you pay cash and we'll certify you. But they have to follow the AT accreditation process to actually award the certification so that they can become ASC certified so they can get hired. I don't know how they can do that by far. I don't believe it's possible.
So we understand the basis of that deadline is in order to ensure that
That's correct. Originally the deadline was May 15th, which is too late for us to call an election. And so that's why they removed the May 15th deadline.
My suggestion is another, which would be to direct you to contact the business council and ask, what if we didn't submit a proposal and they don't submit it and there's no private proposal? Could we have an extension of the deadline to then file proposal after that date if there's no,
Like the next day.
if there's no private proposal?
Mr. Chairman, I had a conference call. That was today. We met today, didn't we? So that was this morning with the business council.
It happens.
Yeah, it does happen, and we had this conversation. Right now, they've set a structure to ensure they can have full vetting to meet the April 1st deadline. And I told them that we may not submit a proposal. They also would like to have them all in for vetting purposes more than that. But I think it's your direction is what it is, and then they have to decide can you work within it. We know that they have to make a recommendation by that's what we know. I think if they're getting a private proposal by Friday, or if they don't, they should certainly be able to entertain the proposal coming in the 11th or whatever. But
Mr. Chairman, if I can also add to that conversation, my concern with either not having a proposal, which I think is a possibility, but I also think the possibility that it's a really bad proposal that was thrown together haphazardly could land on the business council's desk because it's just simply, I am not a business person by trade. I don't know how you put together something that's multi-million-dollar. I just don't know how you do that in 10 days. So maybe it's possible, I'm just not aware of that. But I would be concerned about the quality of the proposal, and I do not want the business council or me to think that, well, the only option we got is a really terrible one. I guess we're gonna try it and go forward. That's a concern for the Laramie community. Again, we do not want to go through this again and have this upheaval and this up and down. It's not good for community stability. I don't think you guys would want it in Cheyenne either.
Well, Mr. Chair,
I don't think you vote.
Mr. Chair, it still is, in my opinion, not prudent for us to submit a proposal by, I like the addendum idea that we've been talking about. Let's see if we can get some information as to whether there's a proposal that's going to come in. Now, you're making an assumption there that it may not be a quality proposal from the private sector. It may be a very good one, and then it may not come at all. If it doesn't come at all, then I think we need to have some room in which we can then present ours. But just put both in and have them compete, and then put those two of them, and they'll say, hey, they both work okay, as you said, and they'll ship it up to the governor, and now the governor has to make a decision. I don't think I would want to put him in that position.
Certainly understand that, and again, I respect that you guys are all Laramie County elected trustees, and my job here is to tell you what is best for the Laramie community and what the Laramie community needs. And we need stability. We need growth in the community college. This is that opportunity. And I don't want to pick up the pieces in 2 or 3 years before profit falls apart. I think that it would be very beneficial to have some information to the trustees about what the for-profit education world looks like right now. It is falling apart. The GRI closed, ITT Tech closed, nothing works and nothing pencils in. I think your educators and the faculty in the room can back you up on that, because back that fact up, because that is the way that the landscape of education is changing. The $30,000 9-month certificate is dead. It just doesn't work. It doesn't pencil anymore. And there are serious Title 14 requirements with financial aid. Title 4, thank you, not an educator, thank you. There are serious gaps in how they could even potentially fund. If you have a $30,000 tuition point, and even if your best qualified student only, for example, they get Pell Grants and full student loans, they only get $14,000. So now you're only targeting students that can bring $15,000 cash to the school, and that doesn't do anything for Wyoming or the Southeast economy. It doesn't provide that opportunity, and so that's why that school has crashed and burned twice.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask your council to put on your senator. So let's Sometimes you wonder what hat you're wearing, right? Yeah. So let's say your interest is to be ready with a proposal to let the private sector shows up process first. And let's say that I conveyed that position by the trustees, not just to the business council office, but to the folks in the House of Representatives and the Senate. Could the current language be amended to make a subsequent proposal in the budget bill based on what's, as they switch house, could that be amended on one side or the other, clarify a sequence of proposal considerations and deadlines by the business council?
Question. Do you want the legislature to make a priority to give preference to private sector proposals?
No, so indirectly they have already by opening this up now to a proposal, which is suggesting that they know the quality of the community. So I think, yeah, I guess I think sequentially it makes sense for a viable proposal to be considered perhaps first, and that meets the legislatures, not the city or the counties. The question though is that determination needs to happen. It needs to be, yeah, it's the best proposal, or no, we think that there's better options in the community college, but to have that type of vetting sequentially. So if the trustees were to say, we'll prepare a proposal, directing the president to submit it until when a private proposal has been deemed acceptable, best interest or whatever. Can we amend that to be?
Open only upon rejection. So, yes, I mean, that certainly can be done. I think that that's tricky. I don't know that it's necessary. I'm not sure that we can't state in our own proposal that intention, communicate that to the public included. It is not the intention of the church to complete the history, which doesn't feel like that's enough. But this submission is being provided in the alternative that is submitted that viable, should only be considered as such. Instead of making some odd kind of priority without understanding what those submissions are. Because you could argue that anyone is appropriate or conversation or money. And so I think it's difficult. But if it's your intention, then it's your intention. The thing is, the college can always back out too, right? So just because you submit a proposal to the business council, you send it. Say, we've determined that some of us are the college. Obviously, that's the situation. Based on the circumstances surrounding this, I'm not sure what else to do. You're not stuck just by submitting a proposal.
So what you said a few sentences ago would be very motion, the structure.
Open all life on rejection?
No, no.
Right after that.
Yes, I can navigate that.
Right after that. So I can certainly, we could put it together, we could communicate it as that, we could set the direction, say it's the trustees that something to consider. And it's sitting in there. I think we can get it by 9. Do that, but make it clear that that's our expectation.
Because there are not the parameters associated with business council. Also a wide door. More questions you ask about that. Only the door will come. So you need those parameters. So there's some benefits to having some ambiguity for what needs to be submitted. Use that to your advantage rather than to your confusion. Nothing prohibits certain information.
Mr. Chairman, can I add from the city perspective, I think that what your council has told you would also be, I mean, it's acceptable to me, is as a compromise, if that's the will of the board of trustees, to put in a proposal that they would prefer to defer to private business and really want it only to be considered to be viable proposal did not come forward. That also helps protect the community against a terrible proposal that comes through that doesn't pencil or it just doesn't work. Or if a proposal doesn't show up, then the LCCC one is sitting behind.
And you can also write a statement in there too, since the college, just to add to the ambiguity and get something back. The college reserves the right to draw its business plan upon further review based on the time that this process is afforded us. And the trustees reserve that right to do what's in the best interest of their district.
So our president needs a directive at this point.
Yes. May I make a motion? Would you like a motion?
I would prefer a position by the board.
I will make a motion that we accept number 1 as our priority, and with Darren Nethercott's wise words that direct the conversation. I don't know how. Is that how you're seeing it? That she will assist you in writing it
Motion
up.
that says tear another couple directly.
You will work together to write a draft that, would that make the?
Vicky, did you happen to capture what she
Sorry.
Public caveat.
So I don't want Tara in a position, I mean, she's a senator and she's our.
It's, the legal advice would be in order to protect the
Okay,
institution
okay.
from what is a precarious situation
Yeah.
for all parties involved, would be in order to protect the institution. I think what is a wise decision made by this board already, it doesn't want to compete.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the decision that we have. Is that the business plan by the college will be submitted as an alternative plan that a private industry's offer to the business council and shall be presented as such.
Should they be viable? Should,
I don't know if we need to create the standards for the
okay,
business council,
just
because
let's
that's what
say
we're
as
doing.
an alternative.
They're determining what's viable or not, or just say it should be considered alternative. Colleges and to private industry.
Dr. Schaefer, will that be okay with you this time?
I believe so, like I say,
I can go back to listen to it.
Mr. Chair, I don't think we need to have a motion here. I think what we're doing is pretty much getting sort of a straw vote way, but I think we do need to see the language and approve it. At a subsequent time, we're going to need a special session to do that. I hate to say that, but I don't think that we should go forward with saying, hey, we authorize you to submit with language that we haven't seen yet.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to second Carol's comment. And I think that I trust Tara and Joe to figure out the appropriate language to make such a submission.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I was a second.
As an alternative.
The direction that I need is to know, this is the big piece, I don't want to submit a proposal, whether or not we can have an exit piece. It shows a very purposeful step, very purposeful intent by the college to engage further in this process of reimbursement service. It's important. What extent do we but I have enough information to go on, and I can work with Eric to make sure that the message in that proposal is very clear, that it's not intended to be sector. The board's directive and the college's position is that viable private sector proposals be given first before considering our proposal as an alternative. But our alternative here is theirs should the private sector does not be in the best interest of the state of Wyoming, as the statute says, to be considered. How we can structure that, I think.
And I'm going to just also add that Tara also said something about us having the option of withdrawing that proposal. And I think that's important as well. So here's how I maybe envision it too, so you can see it. This is like a message to the public, because this would be public. Right, it's just essentially the first page.
I already have a cover letter.
Whereas. Statements as the first page. So it's just whereas.
On rejection.
What I really like about this is it shows our goodwill. And that, I think that's very important that we say that to the public. Even though we have a back out clause, if it doesn't work, it's not gonna work, but we're giving it a chance. And I'm kind of scared about this because I was the one who really wanted to do this bond election and what happened there. But I think that makes the most sense to me.
So it's been moved by trustee Marion, seconded by trustee Soto. Is there any additional discussion?
I would request a couple of things. I would like to see the resolutions from, the county, Albany County and, the city of Laramie. And of course, I think we all know that we'd like to see, the annex process and what all that would mean. So I just want to make sure we get that on the record too, that those two. I agree with that.
It's one thing, and it does explain that you can have the annexation of primary origin. So I don't know if you had it in general, then you would be. That's decent.
The problem with the general is it puts us up to the point where we wouldn't be able to do probably a spring start then, because it's just too far down that. So, yeah, it would just be a delayed start.
Give us some time here. Just figure out.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not, just to add, because of the stuff that's going through the legislation right now with publication times before elections and requirements on county clerks, I'm not sure if we went ahead and did an annex like each election in August, there's not enough time to publish it for the election before November. I think that would still kick it around to the next year. But that's an unofficial. I think so.
And nobody looked at 2019, 2010, we're doing this type of information.
Sounding good at the time, right?
So, that's why that doesn't.
Well, I don't want to add more time onto this discussion, but when I was on this board, when I first came on this board 12 years ago, we were talking about this. And we were talking about it with the Albany County. Yeah, well, Albany County didn't want to do it because they didn't want to tax themselves. So we didn't go we were trying to have it done. And our understanding was that two of this board would be from Albany County. That was always our understanding. I'm not saying that's correct. That was always our understanding, but we would meet with Laramie County or Albany County about it, and Albany County always said, we're not gonna tax, our citizens aren't gonna tax themselves.
It is the natural progression of where districts will have to grow if there's not a statewide tax reform. So I think it's inevitable that we'll see this happen. Especially for successful population growth.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
What'd you say?
So you guys, what I'm worried about are the legislators not from this part of the country, not from this part of the state.
No, they are.
Who will look at this and say, that darn LCCC, you know. I mean, I know there are legislators who don't want to raise state wages because then they think because then they think, oh, then private industry is gonna have to pay more to compete with Cheyenne, and they won't do that. So I'm just saying.
So far, that feeling has not spread over to this situation yet.
Okay, good. Okay.
So I know Laramie suffers the same thing.
That's good to know, Tara.
But that doesn't mean it won't.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much for allowing the discussion. I know it's a heavy lift for the board, and I appreciate the thorough discussion of the points and the compromise that we've come to. I think really protects the learning community as well. So I will go home very happy and be back.
Mr. Chair, I think we all have to commend you because you were persistent, you stayed there, and the compromise, I think, is something that you can live with it. I think we can live with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your work tonight, very much so.
Brady's not gonna get any sleep.
All right, moving
It's a bubble
forward.
boy or something.
We could dispense with the rest of the meeting.
Well, Mr. Chair, I can make a couple things pretty quickly.
Let's do it quick.
Okay. In regard to the WAC meeting, the only thing I'll report on that is that we got new officers. Ernie Over is from Riverton, is the president. There are some other things that happened, but I won't get into that. But there's a significant thing that occurred that the community college commission, and that is that they voted to postpone the removal of the cap on tuition until fall of fiscal 19. And I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but we did, the commission earlier said, okay, we're going to remove the cap. Okay, well, that is going to be delayed now. That was supposed to go into effect.
That 12 hour.
That 12 hours is going to be removed. However, that was going to go into effect this coming fall, and they delayed it for another year. For time to look at a tuition policy and a strategy to deal with tuition at the urging of our president, who has been asking for this for how many years?
As long as I've been here.
Right. So we finally have that. So that's all that I had to report on that. Maybe Bob, you had anyone, and you attended the WAC meeting. You attended the WAC and also the commission meeting. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, not in the interest of time.
Okay. And then going on to the Finance and Facilities Committee, we had some significant discussions there about a couple of things. We had let's see, got the wrong one. I hope you have it in your packet, the level 1 reconnaissance submittal for the administration building.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that? You don't have that? Okay. Well, the estimated cost for this, the redoing it of the administration building, is rather significant. Like about $4,655,000. And I think that during our discussion at the Facilities Committee, Finance and Facilities Committee, I think the staff is wondering, what are you going to do now? That we don't have money for all of that. But one of the elements in that administration redo was the board.
Mm-hmm.
And Judy, maybe you can help me if I'm not quite saying this correctly. But we're looking at either the Mystery Garden or possibly the Education Enrichment Center. The boardroom at the Mystery Center garden, excuse me, would be $811,000. Okay, well, you don't have $800,000. Now, another possibility is redoing the first floor of the PE Education and Enrichment Center, and that would be about $250,000. Now, Rick had asked us on the committee to bring this to the board, and maybe we could deal with this at a subsequent, well, I recommend we deal with it at a subsequent time. And that is, what is our priority? Is our priority to move forward with a new boardroom, or is it to do some renovating in the administration? Now, there is another option. The other option is we stay in this room. That's another option. But I'll ask Dr. Joe, now that he's in here, where are we with moving forward with anything on the renovation and administration?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, but honestly, this is one of those things where, again, you'll have to make my recommendation is sort of the crossroads with the library, and usually find right with some of these other things we're working on. The only thing we can even feasibly do to move your and I don't know if that accomplishes the broader scope of it, which was co-locating and some of the administrative functions. There is an option that's doable to move your. You can see tonight it got pretty full there early on. But I would honestly say let's put that on the shelf for now.
The board vote as well. Okay, all right. So that pretty much brings us up to speed on that. Trustee Little left, but we're going to have a next March 14th, F&F. We're going to have a presentation by John Evans on the Education Investment Fund. And then one other announcement, and that has to do with the P3 workshop, the public-private partnership workshop. That's scheduled for March 8th from 10 to 3 o'clock. Lunch will be included. And as I understand, we're going to have quite a few people, like maybe 80 or so people. Pardon?
You had the RSVP.
Yes, we did. Yeah, I said that's true, but we requested it, yeah.
You went to yeah, she wouldn't have got that.
No.
Passed it on. Yeah.
And then one final thing is I make a motion that we accept the procurement and contracting report for January and the financial statements through December 31.
Just second.
Been moved by trustee Erickson and seconded by trustee Ketchum. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
One last item, that has to do with our trustee budget, but I won't go into that this time. I will prepare one and I'm meeting with Jane tomorrow to finalize it, get it around to all of them.
Thanks. All right. Bush.
Essence of time, I'll refer to Dr. Hammond if he has something to add. If not.
I feel like Mr. Chairman, I feel we probably discussed most of what I would say anyway.
Trustee Davis.
Okay, so first I was been talking with my friends in the PLS network and looking at the news a bit about the walkouts that some high schools are planning in March on 14th and how some colleges have reacted to those by posting on social media, but they will not look down upon that on their permanent record. It won't affect their chances of admission. And then was wondering if our college had done the same or if that was something that really needed to be put out there. And some of the other stuff I can skip over, it's just stuff that's coming up, but all fairly minor. We had success with the recent blood drive and the STD and HIV testing today. Student government's looking at taking other student organizations and clubs and with the help of campus security doing active shooter training so that student leaders across campus may better be able to handle an active shooter situation should it ever, and God forbid, it ever crop up. My personal favorite topic is the pantry. Our friends from CBS 5 came over and did an interview yesterday with our resident Constance Woolheather and myself. And that was on the news last night. They talked about that. I want to give an update just before midterm came up and show you some of the statistics that we have. And in the time span from January 29th to earlier this week, last week, the 23rd of February, we've had 192 visitors to the pantry. 40 of those were second time, or 192 unique visits. 40 of those were second-time visits in 1 week. That's averaging 48 visits a week and 10 people a week. Typically, or 10 of those a week are second-time visitors. But other than that, I don't believe I really have anything to report on. Thank you.
I have a question. How would you like us to react to your request that if a student has walked out on the 14th, that it not affect your college admission?
I wasn't quite sure if that was something to bring from the board meeting or something to talk with PR about, because it's simply just a statement saying that they wouldn't deny based on that.
Okay.
But again, we're a community college, and I don't think people are too concerned about having a single mark on their record like that with us. But I was wondering if it would be a thing of concern at all.
So, Joe, is that something that you would, like, maybe the students could look at Judy about? Or
I would say actually with, probably with James Miller, but we would support the students in that direction. In fact, they're talking about it is the right piece, and so my suggestion is would be work with Zeke and to understand what the impacts may or
can we find out what you guys come up with? I heard about this issue a lot in the household, so.
Right. Thank you, Dick. I'm actually gonna table some of the items that I have on here. One thing that I do want to mention is I have some strategic enrollment management items that our registrar Stacy Nestis gave. And I'd like to share that with you tonight for you to read on your own. And obviously we'll continue our enrollment conversation at another time. But with that said, I'm gonna table my topics for tonight.
Mr. Chairman, as you give that out, the reason we asked Stacy to prepare that is because you've had an interest in actually putting some funding into support it. This assessment, this enrollment readiness assessment that she's proposed may be my preferred recommendation, so we'll do something that I think we can afford and start looking at.
I'm looking at putting 50,000.
This would be a lot less than that, so even better as you go through.
Okay, well then, what would be the appropriate amount?
10 to 15 is what we believe.
I'll put 15.
Sounds good. So we can certainly follow up as you read.
So yes, I do encourage you to read through some of this. This I think will help us with some decisions to be made on the strategic enrollment management. And then of course with the going into the budget or potentially then with a simple check this time. So with that said, I'll leave that there. Additional items. Anybody has anything out there? Next meeting is March 21st. And just to keep in mind that March 14th is the F&F meeting. Dr. Jones, what time is that again? It's 11 o'clock.
Last thing, Mr. Chairman, Brady mentioned, just for those of you that weren't able to be at the WACCT Awards, our student was
Oh.
Haley Greenwald, was going to call something else. A wonderful gal. She serves in college council.
He's also our treasurer.
So, any public comment?
Maybe we go.
Have a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
I second. Seconded. Discussion on the favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No, I